Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to the race watch-along today for the 2021 British Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well, and hopefully today you will join us to watch along this Grand Prix that I think we are in for. Definitely a very interesting Grand Prix because it's very hot, and we are going to get probably a couple pit stops for at least most of the field. I think we are in for a very interesting and intriguing Grand Prix, especially on race strategy, and there's plenty of also cars that are in positions that they're not normally in, so it's not all cars and drivers in their typical positions. There's a bit of a mix-up in there. Of course the sprint qualifying race helped that, but I think we will get definitely a better race than we got for the sprint qualifying race for sure, and hopefully get some good action for this Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well no matter what part of the world you're from, no matter what time it is. Hopefully you're having as best a day as you can possibly be having. Now, if you want to know what the starting grid is for today's Grand Prix, let me go through first the sprint qualifying results, which of course decided the grid for the race. There is, though, one alteration, which I'll get into in a moment. So Max Verstappen will start the 2021 British Grand Prix on pole. That's his first pole position at Silverstone. Hamilton second, Bottas third, Leclerc fourth, and then Norris fifth, Ricciardo sixth, and then Alonso, Vettel, and then Russell did finish in ninth, but had a three-place penalty for his collision with Carlos Sainz during the sprint race. So Russell will actually start the race in P12, meaning that Esteban Ocon will start ninth, Carlos Sainz will start in P10, and then P11 will be Pierre Gasly, P12 will be George Russell, and then the rest of the order will be Raikkonen, Stroll, Giovinazzi, Tsunoda, Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, and Sergio Perez, of course, will start at the very back of the field. But I think Perez will definitely in this race come through because, especially if he starts on a tyre compound that's very well suited for the race, then I think Perez will be in great shape to at least get some points from this particular Grand Prix. Just to let you guys know though as well, I believe coming into this race, as we've only got 27 minutes to go until the Grand Prix gets underway, I believe that everyone can start on whatever tyre compound they want to. I'm pretty certain of it. I wouldn't be surprised if I was still proven wrong, but I am pretty certain that everyone can start the race on whatever tyre compound they want to, which of course will mean that it will make this race a bit different from the norm, where, normally we'll get some soft tyre runners who got into the top 10 on a soft tyre and they'll fall back through the field or have to pit early. That won't, of course, happen. When if it was a normal weekend, I think we definitely have probably 2 or 3, maybe 3 stoppers out there today because, say, certain drivers would have to start on the soft compound tyre. So it's going to be a bit of a different race. Also, it does actually allow the midfield to be more competitive, say, with the front runners, because they'll be able to be on tyres that, say, aren't as bad as what the top runners are on, because all the top runners are always on the ideal tyres, because of course they're so quick in Q2 normally, they can get through on the tyre they want to start the Grand Prix on. But yeah, that's the grid for today's 2021 British Grand Prix, and we've got 25.5 minutes to go, so let's get into previewing this Grand Prix quickly. The race at the front, it's been pretty exciting so far this weekend. Hamilton got pole on Friday ahead of Verstappen for the sprint race, and then of course Verstappen got ahead of Hamilton at the start of the sprint race and then beat him, not by much, but he still beat him at the end of the day. Of course, starts on pole position does Max Verstappen for this Grand Prix. And really, this race is just going to come down to if there is a big moment in terms of a mistake or an overtake that, could happen. But really, it's going to come down to the start of the race and what happens with pit strategy, because Mercedes and Red Bull are so close on performance this weekend that it's really going to be decided by fine margins, as it has been most of this season. I mean, of course, at the Red Bull Ring, Red Bull were clearly dominant there. The first time I'd say Red Bull have been clearly dominant over Mercedes in qualifying trim and race trim, so far this season. So, that was a bit different, I would say, from the norm. And I think, this is bit more towards, say, what we had in France or Spain or Imola, where even though a certain person or a certain team are on pole position, doesn't necessarily mean they have the quickest car for this race today. Because again, very fine margins will decide Grand Prix. Of course, Valtteri Bottas, when it comes to the fight for victory, he will be important. An important tool for Mercedes to use if they want to ever hold up Max Verstappen in this Grand Prix. And for Sergio Perez, unfortunately, the man on screen right now, like I said in my preview, the race preview I did earlier, I think at best he'll probably finish in 7th or 8th place. I don't think he'll probably get in the top 6 because I don't think he'll be able to get his way through the field that quickly to be as quick. Or quick enough, rather, to get after, say, the McLarens or Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. So, 7th or 8th, I think, for him is realistic. But when it comes to the fight up front, because Perez is not up there, it means Mercedes can do effectively whatever they want on strategy to find a way past Max Verstappen. And now I'll bring a Nib in to discuss this race. And Nib, I think you said this to me before we got started here. This race probably going to be very similar to France or Spain, where a very bold, important strategy call really could decide who wins the British Grand Prix today.
Yeah, I will. I hope everyone's well. I'll start out with that. But yeah, I think strategy is going to be important today for sure. Of course, it's boiling hot. It's only 30 degrees in the UK at the moment. Geez, how will they ever survive that sort of treacherous heat? It's hot. It's hot. It's hotter than yesterday. We're at the peak of the temperature. It's 2:37. It'll be 3 o'clock at race time in the UK. So it's certainly going to be quite warm, as we're seeing on the TV broadcast at the moment. Jean Todt and Chase Carey. Good to see the moustache man back on the grid for this weekend. But yeah, strategy is going to be super important. I think that we're probably, I don't know, I was saying before that we might see 1 stops, but I don't know. I think it's just going to be too hot that most teams will be pushed into a 2 stop, which will still make it interesting, but I don't think it'll make it perhaps as interesting if it was a 1 stop versus a 2 stop. But I must say, these hotter conditions certainly favour Red Bull. As we've seen throughout the season and over the last couple of years, when it is hotter, it certainly favours Red Bull. You just have to look at FP1 this weekend, and of course, when the track got cooler for qualifying, that's when Mercedes were looking much stronger. And even in the sprint yesterday, Mercedes were looking pretty good. And I think Mercedes has certainly benefited from those new upgrades that they've brought. That's certainly helped them a lot. They're running certainly a lot less rear wing than what... not even less rear wing, a lot less wing than what Verstappen's running, and we certainly saw that in the sprint yesterday. Sorry, I've got to make sure I really emphasise the sprint, because we got to get our... it's not about us legacy fans, it's about the new young fans. So big up the sprint. I'm joking, of course. That can piss off. But yeah, I think we're in for quite an interesting Grand Prix because, of course, Mercedes certainly look very fast in a straight line. So I think if Red Bull perhaps Verstappen gets overtaken at the start, I think it could be a bit of a tough race. But we're seeing with the pit stops and the strategy that Red Bull are being really good this year. So I actually am really excited for this race. I think we're in for a good one.
Yeah, I think up front, I don't see it being similar to the races in Austria where it was Verstappen getting out front and just pulling away relentlessly and dominating both races. I don't think we'll have a similar situation today. Hopefully it's similar to France where, you had multiple changes for the lead. Verstappen losing the lead at the first corner and then regaining it and losing it again because, of course, he pitted for that second time and only just regaining it by the end to win the race. If we get something like that, it'd be fantastic. But I think at the very least, through the race, Verstappen and Hamilton are going to be close on time. And by the end of the race, I think there'll only be, say, if they do the same amount of pit stops, I think there'll only be 5 seconds at most separating the two at the end of the race. And they're going to lap a lot of people as well, because I've got to say the pace of
Yeah.
Hamilton and Verstappen in that sprint race was quite incredible compared to the pace of the midfield runners. So I think, those two are going to be in a race-long battle. Valtteri Bottas, though, I do think will play an important factor. And because they can start the race on whatever tyre they want to, I wouldn't be surprised if they started Valtteri Bottas on the hard tyre. Because if you remember last year, Verstappen started on the hard tyre in the hot conditions, and we saw how well it worked. He ended up, really, that was the reason he won the Grand Prix, because the hard tyre was so good when even the medium wasn't even that good of a tyre in the heat of the last British Grand Prix, or the last race at Silverstone, rather, the 70th anniversary Grand Prix of 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if they went on the hard tyre with Bottas to try and run him longer into the Grand Prix, and possibly, if he needs to, they'd allow him then to hold up Verstappen if Verstappen is still ahead of Hamilton after the first round of pit stops. We'll have to see, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Now, with the midfield, I think we can definitely say that maybe not the entire Ferrari team, but at least Charles Leclerc is looking very strong for Ferrari, and the McLaren team overall are probably the strongest midfield team, I think, going into this race. I do think McLaren will get, say, 4th and 5th in this race because they have stronger race pace, and I think as long as they get within a second of Leclerc during the race, the Ferrari will not be able to defend with the DRS open on the McLaren. So I think McLaren are going to be very good today. Ferrari should be, I think because of the free tyre choice, Ferrari probably will get a double points finish because of that. I think if it wasn't that case, though, and they had to start on the soft, I think they'd struggle a lot more. I really think they would. But I don't think they'll be as quick as McLaren, because McLaren are just quicker at the moment than Ferrari are. That's just the plain facts of it. And then after that, there's kind of an order that I see in the midfield, but it's still very close. I mean, I think Aston Martin are probably the best team after, say, that front four of Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari. And Aston Martin have got, let's say, with Sebastian Vettel, a good position for the race. Also, Alpine are in a very good position, even though with Alpine, I don't think that anywhere near as quick as their grid position, for sure. So, I think Alpine will probably fall back. Not massively, but they'll probably fall back because I don't think they're as quick as 7th and 9th on the grid. But it's still going to be very close between Vettel, Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Russell to a certain extent, even though I do think later in the race the Williams will struggle, because it normally does tend to. As the Grand Prix goes on, the Williams does tend to struggle to maintain that speed. Say in the early stages of a Grand Prix, or say from qualifying. So I do think Russell will struggle. I still think he'll have a decent race though, Russell, in this Grand Prix. And then I think also Alfa Romeo will be pretty strong, especially with Kimi Räikkönen starting in the highest position he started a race from, I think, in at least 2 years. So hopefully Räikkönen has a good Grand Prix today. Nib, for the midfield, like I said, McLaren and Ferrari are probably the two quickest teams, as we've seen so far this season. But after that, when you look at the rest of the grid, who are you looking out for that could make progress up the field? Say Vettel or Gasly or Stroll? Who are you looking out for there?
Well, this is the thing, Chaz. If you have a look at the Pirelli tyre information, both of the Aston Martins don't have fresh set of tyres. Now, I don't know if these used tyres have just done an outlap on them. That certainly could be the case, but I think perhaps that could affect them. I mean, it's hard to know because we don't have the all of the information, but yeah, I think quite clearly McLaren are the fastest midfield team this weekend. Of course, Leclerc done a superb job in the sprint to stay in P4, and I think he'll certainly have he'll still be around there for a little bit. But I see him probably falling back into 5th place. You'd expect Carlos Sainz to make his way up through the field as well, although I mean it's very hot, and Ferrari in their hot tyre wear hasn't exactly been fantastic now, has it? So I know I'm still a little bit worried about Ferrari, especially with Carlos Sainz. Um, who knows what Fernando Alonso could do? He could gain about 7 positions on the start and be in first or second by the end of the first lap. So who knows what Alonso is going to do? To be honest, it's just so. It's just I love Fernando Alonso. It was so great to watch him do his stuff yesterday. Um, then I think Perez will come through, but he's had an Alexander Albon weekend this weekend. Perez, he's had a bit of a stinker, and I think the new format certainly hurt him quite significantly. So yeah, I think definitely the McLarens, the Ferraris, and then you'd expect Perez to come in. And I think it's going to be quite a fight between the Aston Martins, Alonso, even Tsunoda, Gasly, probably not Tsunoda. He hasn't quite been on the pace this weekend, and perhaps even Russell for the final couple of points.
Talking of Russell, where do you think realistically he'll finish today? I mean, of course, that grid penalty, I think really, because of the competition around him, I think that pretty much eliminates, unless enough people retire, I think that eliminates a really good chance of him finishing in the points. But where do you think realistically he'll finish, say, where he is on the grid?
Yeah, you'd expect around 12th, 13th, if no cars retire. But, I mean, obviously we had no contact yesterday, but it is quite easy to have some contact here on the first lap, especially as, you're able to go side by side nearly all the way up until, all the way through Copse, basically. And by the way, Fernando Alonso's move on Lando Norris around the outside of Copse, yeah, that was pretty bloody good yesterday. Sorry, I keep banging on about Fernando Alonso, but yesterday was the Fernando Alonso show in the sprint. And thank heavens he actually made it somewhat enjoyable. But yeah, around 12th or 13th, you'd think for Russell.
And lastly, before we get on to the final 10 minutes here, for Daniel Ricciardo, of course, I know you're very happy about that. What do you think the causes are for that? Do you think it's just this circuit he goes better at, or do you think it's that and a combination of he's a lot more suited to the car than he was, say, at Monaco, Baku time?
I mean, well, he was even struggling, of course, in Austria. I think it's mainly been the one lap pace where Ricciardo struggled. You've seen in the races that he's actually been a bit stronger than perhaps his quali pace, and I think that's just down to how good of a car the McLaren actually is. But yeah, it's been good to see Daniel be back towards the level that he should be at, and this is certainly much more of what I expected from Daniel throughout this season. So hopefully he can have a good race today. I think that McLaren should be finishing 4th and 5th today, of course, bearing any retirements. So yeah, I'm certainly pretty excited to see what the McLarens can do today, and especially Daniel Ricciardo. And now they do get pretty punchy on the first lap, so can we please avoid any contact, especially when Ricciardo's actually got a good qualifying for once?
Well, you never know. If something happens to the top 3, Ricciardo might be on the podium. Not to get your hopes up or anything.
Settle down. Settle down.
But you never know. McLaren are getting used to podiums by the look of it at the moment, so you never know, could happen. But yeah, I think McLaren definitely will be very strong, and if they were to get 22 points from this Grand Prix, which is what 4th and 5th would be, that'd be a pretty great result. Now, with 10.5 minutes to go, we'll now get into some of our predictions for the British Grand Prix. Now, I'll go first with mine, with the top 5. For victory, it's really hard to say, because I could see Hamilton winning this race for sure, because, back on Friday, the guy looked very, very much more confident than I've seen him for quite a while. And I think definitely that crowd that we have this weekend, or have today rather, I think it really helped him rev him up and give him the boost he needed mentally and for his confidence after Austria, where he looked like a shell of what we've seen from him in the past. But for victory, I am going to go for Lewis Hamilton, because I think Mercedes, because Perez is not in play, I think Mercedes will find a strategy for him that will allow him to come at Verstappen later in the Grand Prix and pass him on fresher tyres. I think Hamilton will win, Verstappen second, And then Bottas will finish third. Fourth, I'm going to go Lando Norris. And then fifth, I will go Daniel Ricciardo there. Nib, what is your top 5 for the race today, in your opinion?
Yeah, I can certainly see yours set playing out. I mean, yeah, I think Mercedes is going to be pretty strong today. That's, as we were speaking about just a little bit earlier. It's just a question of how the tyres behave today. We know in the heat it favours Red Bull a bit more than what it does to Mercedes, but let's see. But yeah, I think Verstappen's going to hold on to first place, then followed home by Hamilton in second, Bottas in third. Then yeah, I mean, and then Norris and Ricciardo in fourth and fifth. But I tell you what, Hamilton can ill afford to have a start like he did yesterday, because if he has a start like that, then certainly you'd expect Verstappen to probably walk away with the race. So yeah, I think that the start's certainly going to be pretty important. We know it's not the easiest to overtake here around Silverstone, so yeah, Hamilton's going to need a good start. And on that note, I'm going to go for a quick little toiletry break before we start.
Yeah, you best do before the race starts. And yeah, great point that Nib makes there at the start, because obviously Hamilton had a poor one there. And Hamilton hasn't really had that many great starts as of late. So we'll look out for that. I can't really remember Hamilton this season having a good start that I remember. I mean, he's maintained position a lot. I mean, it helps when you're in the first 2 positions on the grid. There's not much to gain, only 1 position when you're starting second at worst. But yeah, another thing with Hamilton, though, if he does have a poor start that Nib mentions there, he's also this time on the dirty side of the grid and also on the inside of turn 1, which is a very bad place to be, because if a car is almost alongside you, fully alongside you, and they're on the outside, they have the better line and they have more grip to go just right round the outside. So if Hamilton does have a poor start, he won't just lose position to Bottas. He could lose position to a McLaren if it has a good start, sailing around the outside. So he has to at least make sure he is in second at the end of the first lap, because if he, like Nib says, if he drops down to 4th or 5th, then Verstappen will build such a lead, in 10 laps, then it'll be over unless something happens to Max Verstappen. But guys, with about 7 minutes to go until the formation lap begins for the 2021 British Grand Prix, let me know right now in the live chat, who do you think will win today's Grand Prix, finishing 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th? Give me your top 5 predictions for today's 2021 British Grand Prix, and I will read out as many as I can in the chat before we get underway here at Silverstone. As just to update you, they're just doing the last ad breaks on Sky F1, so we are very close now to this getting underway, which I cannot wait for. I just want to say before I read out some of your comments, your predictions, don't forget, guys, to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, as me and Nib do qualifying watch-alongs and race watch-alongs for F3 Grand Prix in 2021, and we will be in 2 weeks for the last Grand Prix before the summer break in Hungary. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel for that. Bottom right of the screen, you can sub right there, or just go to my channel page and sub there. And whilst you're there, hit the notifications bell, and also don't forget to smash this like button and share the video and channel everywhere you can to help us out, if you do enjoy the content, of course. As now, with 5.5 minutes remaining, let's read out some of your predictions here. Let me find the first one. Bang, off the bang, says Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas, Norris for his top 4. Papa Woody says Bottas, Leclerc, baby, Ricardo. Astro Stevo saying, hoping Hamilton wins here for the title's sake. Hamilton first, Ricardo second, Norris third, Leclerc fourth, Perez fifth. That would be an amazing top 5 if we were to get that. Vinster, who's also known as Vincent Otis, of course, says Max, Hamilton, Bottas, Norris, Leclerc. Prosecutor Darth Desidui. That's a very interesting name. There's Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas, Norris, Leclerc. Mike Post, great to see you, says Max, Bottas, Norris. M Gecko says Max Lando Daniel. Brother Mars, great to see you. Of course, a regular in the Discord, I believe. Lewis Bottas, Max, Ricardo, Lando. KG, great to see you. There's Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas, Norris, and Russell to get in the top 10, in his opinion. Racer Jashim. There's Max, Hamilton, Norris, Leclerc, Perez. Bomber Mike thinks it'll be Hamilton, then Verstappen. Peter King goes Lewis, Bottas, Norris, Leclerc, and Alonso in 5th. Well, if Alonso, like the sprint race, if he starts on the soft compound tyre, then he'll probably lead on lap 3. So if they want the glory of that, then they can go for it if they want to. I'm not sure it will lead to an actual successful race strategy for themselves. And like I said, I'd be very surprised, as I said in my race preview this morning or lunchtime, I'd be very surprised if anybody was to use the soft tyre today, because after 5 laps it'll be dead, as we saw last year in this heat where the soft tyre was just so bad, because it just doesn't last. I mean, it lasts, what, 2 or 3 laps until it really just falls away massively. So that's why you're going to see tons of medium and hard tyre runners today trying their best to go as long into the Grand Prix as possible to give themselves fresher tyres for the end of the race. And like we've been saying, I think we're probably going to see probably a 2-stop for most. I do think though we will get a 1-stop from some people, because I think there'll be some people who will start on the hard tyre. I think, for example, Kimi Raikkonen will try a 1-stop race. Wouldn't be surprised if Sergio Perez tried a 1-stop race. I could definitely see why they would try a 2-stop though. Say if he started on the hard and went for a 2 sets of mediums to finish the race. But I think we will get some 1-stoppers out there. Not many, but I think we will get some, as the tyre compounds for this weekend are C3, C2, C1, the 3 hardest possible compounds. But in this heat, it's still going to be pretty hard to keep those tyres as they now get ready with the starting grid. So I think, for myself, I will hide some of these graphics and get us ready here for the Grand Prix. So let me just adjust things quickly. So you can see Nikita Mazepin on the screen. Not that we'll see him much longer. As there's a starting grid. And of course, I'll update when the actual race starts, the lap counter in a moment. But the starting grid, guys, the 2021 British Grand Prix, in case you don't know, is Max Verstappen on pole position from Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, Norris, Ricardo, Alonso, Vettel, Ocon, Sainz. That is your top 10. And then from P11 to P20, of course, the very back of the grid, it is Gasly, Russell, Raikkonen, Stroll, Giovinazzi, Tsunoda, Latifi, Schumacher, Mazepin, and Perez is 20th, but he will start from the pit lane because he broke Parc Ferme rules by changing a lot of parts of his car. Of course, after that spin yesterday in the sprint, as Nib would say. And
very good.
Are you back now?
Yeah, I'm back. I heard someone predict Ricardo to finish second.
It was Astro Stevo, who I can guess why, because he's also an Australian. But
well, that makes sense. But yeah, I tell you what, if that happens, yeah, I think there'd be some noises made from me. To be honest, that would be quite peculiar.
Inhumane, I'd say noises. To be honest.
Yes, animalistic noises.
Yeah, and probably drinking out of your shoe, probably as well.
Indeed.
As the formation lap will get underway in a moment, and I will give you the tyre information in just a moment in terms of who is starting in what tyre. Lewis Hamilton has never finished lower than second in the hybrid era at Silverstone, it says. There, and Verstappen has led 70% of all Grand Prix in 2021. So yeah, every driver is on the medium tyre except for Sergio Perez, who's on the hard, understandably. So everyone on the same tyre. So there is no advantage to be gained on tyres, because everyone is doing the exact same thing. So that will actually close things up, because, like I said, they're on the same tyre, so it will come down to driver performance and also just mostly the performance of the cars relative to each other, as the formation lap gets underway right now. And there you go. Verstappen and Hamilton lead away as Hamilton does a very brief practice start. And he's hoping for himself that he'll get a good start here. I was just saying, Nib, whilst you were gone, that another thing you were saying with Hamilton's, not having a bad start. Also, he's on the inside this time. And if he has a poor start this time, then F1 will be able to just sail around the outside of him and have a lot more grip. So it's even worse, wouldn't you say, if he was to have a bad start here?
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be great as you'd expect his teammate to go flying around the outside if that happened. So, yeah, although I wouldn't be shocked if they told Bottas to move out of the way, especially if Hamilton was quite fast. I mean, it's what they should do, to be honest, if Hamilton is caught behind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, interesting because as I heard you saying as I was leaving, Hamilton hasn't really had many good starts so far this season. I mean, he had a pretty good start at the last Grand Prix, where he got a pretty equal pull away as Verstappen, but he's not really had a start where, he's held Verstappen behind a lot. So, yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens here on the first lap.
Absolutely. As Hamilton and Verstappen are just coming in now to the final sector, that turn one, it is very tricky turn one in terms of making a position because it's so quick and you could easily, if you clip the curb, for example, the inside curb too hard, you can easily spin towards the exit and cause an accident, and it's very hard to make a move into turn one, even just in the normal race. As the packed Silverstone crowd watches as a weekend attendance of 356,000, they've just put up on the screen, which I'm sure the Corona Queen loves very much, and will be in lockdown before you even fucking know it. As Max Verstappen now lines up on pole position for this Grand Prix. Not right now, but he's about to. He's now come onto the starting grid. As Tom Cruise is in the Mercedes garage. He's been everywhere in the last week or so in England, watching as many sports events as possible. As Verstappen lines up on pole. I think he's got his car, and there's Harrison Ford in the Williams garage, which is surprising to see. Verstappen has got his car slightly pointed towards Hamilton, so obviously going to try, if he can, and cover off Hamilton as Verstappen lined up on pole now. And the Grand Prix will be underway soon, as we're just getting the final few cars now lined up on the grid for the 52-lap British Grand Prix. As Nikita Mazepin now comes through the final corner, Perez lines up at the end of the pit lane. Of course, he'll get away last once they all pass that exit of the pit lane. And Mazepin now lines up, and the lights come on. The British Grand Prix is about to get underway here at the hot Silverstone circuit. And it's underway right now as Max Verstappen looks as though it's not got as good a start as Hamilton. Hamilton down the inside. Verstappen right around the outside, bumps over the exit there a bit. There's a car slightly off in the back there. I think it might have been Mazepin or Schumacher in the Haas. And Hamilton all over the back here. Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc's up to third, ahead of Valtteri Bottas. The two McLarens are side by side. And Hamilton now right in the slipstream, going down now to turn number 6. And will Hamilton go right around the outside? There's going to be contact there, is there? No, there was very nearly contact between the two. They're giving each other basically no space at all, and somehow have not hit each other. As Hamilton now, as you've been saying there with the lower wing, now in the slipstream of Verstappen on the run up to Copse corner. Can Hamilton go right down the inside at Copse? Oh, he's hit him! Verstappen's off! Verstappen's into the barriers! Verstappen is out of the Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton surely has damage. Massive accident. That has got to be a safety car, and that is a massive moment in the World Championship. Wow.
What was in the lead?
Leclerc, and yes, Charles Leclerc is leading the Grand Prix. An amazing turn of events, and we'll have to see a replay of what happened there, but Hamilton clearly felt he had to get past Verstappen, and we'll have to see a replay whether Verstappen squeezed him or Hamilton just simply understeered straight into him. But I hope Verstappen's okay. I'm going to guess he is, as Mercedes are going to have to pit with Hamilton for damage. A new front wing. We haven't seen a shot of the front wing, but I'm not surprised if it's damaged. Hamilton is staying out. Hamilton staying out on track. That's surprising. So Hamilton will stay out as we now begin lap 2 under the safety car here. And I'll just do the order in a moment. As Max Verstappen is out. He's now getting out of the car. Looks a bit shaken by that crash. But it is Charles Leclerc leading the Grand Prix. From Hamilton now second. Bottas third. And then Norris fourth. Ricciardo 5th. Vettel is up in 6th place. Alonso is in P7. With Carlos Sainz in 8th. Has Verstappen hurt himself here?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked, Chaz. The impact of that crash at 300 kilometers an hour going into Cops, I wouldn't be surprised if he is certainly hurt here. It almost looks like is he hurt his knee or one of his legs? I'm not entirely sure. He's certainly a bit ginger. But this was bound to happen. I'm surprised there wasn't contact into Brooklands. Hamilton was squeezing him to the inside so much. They were millimetres apart. And, we've got to wait for a replay, of course, to see exactly what happened into Cops. But this was inevitable. And this is why you never, ever, ever say that the championship is over. Especially when there's freaking about 20-odd races to go. Obviously, it's not 20, but we still had so many races to go. And we've got a red flag because there's quite an impact to the barrier, but we'll let you go through this, Chaz.
So just seeing the replay. So Hamilton to the inside of Verstappen. And I think if you're going to blame anyone, I think you've got to blame Hamilton there because I don't see Verstappen. Verstappen did not squeeze Hamilton there. Verstappen gave a bit of space on there on the inside car. So Hamilton goes down the inside and yeah, that's Lewis Hamilton's fault. Hamilton ran... I think was just a bit too aggressive and ran just a bit too wide through Cops. And you could see definitely Verstappen was running wider through Cops than he normally would. He knew he was there. He was letting him have the space. And then Hamilton hit him. So, and look at that. Verstappen's tyre didn't just break. It flew off. His tyre flew off. And look, it's just balancing on the side of the car. I've never seen that before. It was hit so hard. The tyre didn't damage itself. It literally flew off the car. As yet, we have a red flag. Cars will line up in the pit lane now, and obviously they want to repair the barriers. So that means I think we'll have a standing restart with Leclerc in pole position, and I think it'll be lap 3 now. I believe out of 52 because I think they're about to cross the line now. So it's lap 3 out of 52. Just to confirm that on screen, but then I need to make sure that I add. And of course, with the red flag, that means Lewis Hamilton can repair his car and not lose a position, which is massively beneficial. And even if he gets a penalty, because of his sheer pace, he's not going to lose that much time compared to the midfield runners. So Hamilton has really got lucky here. He really has with that red flag. As front wing doesn't actually look too bad. It must not be. It must be a smaller bit of damage for Hamilton there. And I'll just update on the screen that we have a red flag. Nib, what did you think of that incident? Would you say Hamilton clearly at fault there?
I need to watch it again and again and again to make my mind up on that. But I think almost Hamilton was caught out by the fact that Verstappen wanted to hold it around the outside there. I don't think he was really expecting that. And then he got a little bit surprised by that. Was already going to drift out wide, and then boom, he's hit Verstappen. I think I need to see a lot more, to be honest, to properly make my mind up. But as I was saying, this was always going to happen. The way that these two have been pushing each other so far this season, went side by side, it was bound to happen, and here we are, a massive moment in the World Championship.
Absolutely. Here's the race start. So Hamilton got up the inside of Verstappen. Verstappen, I think, did briefly go off the track, but I don't think he necessarily gained that much by doing that. And then through turn 4, Hamilton did the switchback through the exit, got a great run down to turn 6, and Verstappen defended to the inside, then came to the middle, then Hamilton tried to squeeze him, and I was very surprised there that there wasn't contact. I almost thought there was definitely going to be. I was almost preparing myself for contact there. I thought Hamilton's rear tyre was going to deflate against Verstappen's front wing. And then Hamilton gets in the slipstream again. I mean, he did this yesterday, and that time went round the outside. This time goes to the inside. I just think if you look at Hamilton's line, he's not as far to the inside as he could be. He could be a bit closer to that inside curve. I mean, obviously you don't want to be too close to it, because if you hit it too hard, you'll end up, probably having a bit of a spin or a moment. And there was contact there, actually, on the first lap, as Verstappen rejoined on the exit of turn 1. But I just think Hamilton just went into the corner too quick, just carried too much speed in. Verstappen let him have the inside, wasn't squeezing him, and Hamilton just ran wide and hit him off. I just think that's a slam dunk. That's a slam dunk penalty, I think, coming his way. Have you changed your mind since you're seeing this? You're still seeing it now because they're showing the onboard from Hamilton.
How the fuck did they not touch going into Brooklands?
No idea.
That unbelievable defense up the inside as well by Verstappen. But now this is more of what I want to see. Now this replay. Of course, I'm a little bit behind you, but yeah, well and truly in the slipstream. Max defending to the inside, then Hamilton still decides to go around the outside. Yeah, I don't think he's expecting Verstappen to hold it around the outside. I certainly, I think it's going to take a couple of days for me to really perform, like to just make my mind up on that. I do. Jeez, I don't know, because both super aggressive.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's what's making it sort of so difficult. What a start that was by Leclerc as well. See you later, Bottas. But yeah, now Charles Leclerc in the lead at the British Grand Prix.
Nobody thought this was going to happen, which is something we've said so many times this season. But yeah, with that incident, from Verstappen's point of view, I just don't see what else he could have done. I mean, he defended very aggressively, yes, but that is Max Verstappen to a T, and not necessarily against the rules. But on the exit of Copse, I just don't sit on through Copse. He went pretty wide, did Verstappen. That's what I mean. He went pretty wide, a lot wider than, say, other people have gone through that section before, when they're wheel to wheel with another car. And I just don't see what else Verstappen could have done. Gave him the space, and Hamilton, I just think, simply carried too much speed into the corner and took him off the circuit. I don't see. I mean, if Hamilton had hit, say, the inside curb and it forced him a bit wider, then you could understand why Hamilton maybe had done it. But I just think Hamilton simply carried too much speed. As hopefully Verstappen, by the way, is okay. Hopefully he's okay, as I've said. But I just don't see, like I said, what Max Verstappen could have done anything differently. And I don't think. I just think it's a kind of a slam dunk. I just think it's just a case of a driver running just slightly too wide into the corner, just sliding wide into Verstappen. And you've got to remember as well, the inside of Copse Corner is very dirty offline. It's very hard to go up the inside there and get through without having a bit of a moment. That's why it's so rarely done, going up the inside of Copse. If you're going to make an overtake work, normally you have to go around the outside, because at least you are more so on the racing line there rather than on the inside. And I think Hamilton there, I would be very surprised. In fact, I would say he should get a penalty for that, because that is, I would say, the definition of causing an unnecessary collision, because it wasn't, he wasn't forced into anything. Like I said, Verstappen defended. Hamilton decided to go at the inside because he wanted to be super aggressive and try and make sure he got the position. And it just didn't work because he just was too aggressive going into the corner and then took Verstappen off. I just think that's a clear-cut penalty, but I'm sure plenty of people will have their opinions, as they normally do, but Now we wait for the race to get back underway as we're currently red flag conditions. And just to update you guys, it is only lap 3 out of 52. And I think the restart will be a standing restart as Hamilton and Verstappen now under investigation. I'd like to know what reason it is, whether it's for causing an unnecessary collision. No, just causing a collision. Turn 9 incident involving cars 33 and 44. I think Hamilton will get a penalty for that. Would you be surprised if he got a penalty, Nib?
Not really. Not really. Yeah, I sort of agree with you. Like, Lewis on the radio is saying that he was ahead, which was not true. He wasn't. It was his line in the corner. Whereas, look at that. When he hits him, Verstappen's ahead. He had room on the inside. I think Verstappen left him as much room as he could if he wanted to go side by side through cops. And I must say, thank Christ the frickin' tyre didn't go flying into the crowd, because that would have been very nasty. But yeah, at that stage of when Hamilton goes down the inside, he's certainly not expecting Verstappen to go around the outside, and then he's saying, "I'm ahead." Well, you're not, buddy. You're not. And yeah, then he makes the contact with Verstappen. I think it's pretty simple if you look at it like that. I think it'll be a penalty for Hamilton, and we probably won't be back underway for probably another half an hour as they probably repair the barrier. Obviously, nothing's confirmed on Twitter, but yeah, I think we'll be quite a while.
Unfortunately, so. And yeah, Verstappen now I think we took the medical center. I'm going to guess it was because the G-force sensor triggered. That's probably why they took him to the medical center as quickly as possible, just to make sure he's fine and he's not got any concussion symptoms. And yeah, now we wait for the race to get underway. They haven't even cleared the Red Bull car away yet, which I have to say I'm very surprised they've not even cleared the car yet. And we've been red flags now for about 15 minutes, so yeah, very surprising we've waited so long still and they haven't cleared the car away. And hopefully that's cleared away within the next 5 minutes or so, because I've just seen there are a couple Red Bull mechanics now out there. And they're going to put it, of course, on the back of the truck. The FIA radio is going. I won't be able to turn my sound up because I haven't got control of the works to turn it up even if I wanted to.
I'll tell you on Twitter, when it comes on Twitter in a minute, don't worry.
From Mr. Medland. I think what we'll do during this red flag is I will read out some verdicts from you guys in the comments as to that incident, just your initial thoughts as to, what you thought of the incident. Let's see what you guys have to say. Let me just see what the comments are here. Kazuki says understeer for Lewis. It wasn't necessarily understeer. I just think he carried too much speed. I think it was a combination. He was on the dirty side of the track, so naturally you're going to run wide because he's on the marbles. But also he carried just a tad too much speed into the corner when Verstappen was trying to hold it around the outside, which is what he was rightfully doing. Because if they were going to both make it through, if Verstappen didn't do that, then there would have been a crash, even if Hamilton was far more to the inside. So I think, like I said, I don't think Verstappen really could have done anything differently in that instance. As Sky F1 are now going to analyse it with the Sky Pad not mid race, but during the red flag period. But again, I don't think it's necessarily understeer. I just think we got to remember as well. First lap, very hot, home Grand Prix, Hamilton versus Verstappen, title on the line. Way more emotion than brain cells at that point for everyone, not just Lewis Hamilton, flowing through. These things happen. I'm not saying Hamilton is right for doing what he did or should be, or should not get a penalty, but you know, these things do happen, and it's a typical thing you see on the first lap, where again the blood's pumping, very pumped up, trying desperately to get ahead of someone who's defending all over the place to try and keep you behind. It's just something that does happen. It's not out of the ordinary. It's just, again, he tried desperately to get ahead into Cop's corner by going to the inside, which I can understand because he tried to go around the outside of Verstappen yesterday in the sprint race, and it didn't work because he didn't have enough of his car alongside. And you're not going to go around the outside of Max Verstappen. It's just not going to happen. As we're just showing now, Verstappen coming through there. I mean, it is a tight one, but I don't see... I mean, I think Sky are trying to show that, yeah, Verstappen was turning right, but he has to turn right. He's turning into a right-hand corner. And Verstappen, like I said, he's not... I don't think he's unnecessarily squeezing Lewis Hamilton there. And we'll see from this Verstappen on board. Verstappen, I mean, he stays... You could argue he stays towards the middle of the track, but he's nowhere really near where he should be for that corner. So again, it's not like he's just turned in and Hamilton's took him off. So just showing the slow-mo replay of it now. And, I mean, they don't even get to the mid part of Copse. They crash at the very entry to Copse corner. I mean, that does kind of make it look a bit different. I mean, Max Verstappen maybe wasn't as far over to the left as I thought, but I just don't see in that situation, at full speed, what Max Verstappen could have done any differently. With Hamilton, I think he could have been less aggressive. Because I think, again, you have to remember, he was on the dirtier side of the track. And, you know, the inside for that right-hander, you know, you're not going to have the optimal line going through there. And it's always going to be the person on the outside who has the optimal line. So, I just think Hamilton couldn't really stop himself from running into Verstappen there. As it's just showing a replay here of on Sky F1 of Hamilton and Verstappen. And I think they're trying to show that Verstappen's turning in on Hamilton. But I think what they're failing to realise is it's not like Lewis Hamilton is as far over to the right-hand side as he possibly can be. Verstappen's still just cutting him straight off. What do you think, Nib? Have you seen any of that on Sky F1 or not?
Not really, because I'm not going to listen to propaganda sports, so yeah. I've just been going through Twitter the whole entire time. The reason why it's taking so long is because, well, I mean, I'm not too sure if you saw in the replays, but they've got the computers hooked up to the car because there's issue with the battery at the moment. So that's why we're a little bit delayed in things happening.
Right.
I'm not too sure if they've got... Okay, well, there you go. Yes, they've got everything turned off now, and they can move the car and we can start going. So that's why there was a little bit of a delay.
Okay. What's as well? Oh, that Red Bull car is absolutely destroyed. That's gonna
not what you want in a year where the teams are struggling with the budget cap.
Exactly. That's going to be a massive repair job there. What's the verdict online that you've seen in terms of who's to blame?
Mostly, I mean, from the people that I follow, I haven't been looking through at like F1's thingos and looking through replies because I'm going to waste my time doing that. But I think most are saying that Hamilton is probably Hamilton's fault.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to say, I have to clarify, it's not, you know, I've seen multiple incidents worse than what Hamilton did. It is something typical of what you see on the first lap, but I just don't see how Hamilton won't get a penalty for that, or maybe shouldn't get a penalty for that. Because it is literally causing a collision. I mean, it's not like just a case of contact was made and it was inevitable. I just think Hamilton, you know, it's not like Verstappen. I don't think Verstappen turned in far enough into the inside of the corner to say that Verstappen turned in on Hamilton and therefore Verstappen hit Hamilton, if you know what I mean. I just think it was Hamilton really sliding just a bit too wide through the corner. Again, dirty side of the track, and probably carrying a tad bit too much speed into the corner that slid him into the side of Max Verstappen. But it's still a very close incident. Again, when it happens at full speed like that, it's very hard to avoid that type of incident happening when those things happen. But I'll keep reading through the chat what you guys are having to say. Flop says Hamilton could have held up a bit more and tightened his turn. Elite Gaming says it was a racing incident. I will say I can completely understand why certain people say it's a racing incident. I can completely understand why. One, it's a first lap and, because of the grip of the circuit, things are a lot worse for the cars or drivers than it would be normally. But also, in that incident, it's not like 100% Hamilton fault. They were both very aggressive. And again, very emotional, I guess you could say, in their racing in that first half of the first lap. So, yeah. Itas says Hamilton misjudged. I'll give him benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I don't think it's not.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt when he's just crashed Verstappen into the wall at 300 kilometers an hour. Like, I think if the contact was on the apex, I think that's the point where you give it a racing incident. But not for me. It's not a racing incident for me.
I can see why they think it is, but I agree. I don't think it's a racing incident, but I can completely understand why they think that way. But, I mean, like I said, with Hamilton...
I just disagree.
I think with Hamilton, it's a mistake plenty have made on a first lap when on the inside, the dirty side of the track, just running a bit too wide or just carrying a touch too much speed into the corner. It happens all the time. We've seen it so many times. Sometimes it doesn't result in contact and result in just one car going off on its own, but as 15 minutes, it says, until resumption. So at 3:42 p.m., well, approximately 15 minutes, so let's say 3:45 p.m., if there's a small delay, they'll get the race going again, which is good news. So we will be getting going again, guys. Don't worry, still got, 49, 48 laps left, so plenty still left in this Grand Prix to come. Yeah, what Hamilton did is, I do think Hamilton was at fault, but it's not like Hamilton has done a heinous crime. Let's not act like that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I've seen so many people make that mistake at other tracks, other corners, where they just simply carry too much speed into the corner, desperately trying to make a position and just hit another driver off. So, right, we'll see what other comments we have here. Infinite says, what the fuck? People have double standards. Don't people always say first lap incidents are racing incidents? Not necessarily. What people mean by that is most incidents on a first lap can be put down to just the way, so many cars in such a tight area. Again, the poor grip of the track on the first lap. Again, the first lap is very unique compared to most racing incidents that say well, not most racing incidents, but other racing incidents that don't take place on the first lap. Because again, the grip of the track is poor. You're starting on the grid. You've not got a proper run, going to start the lap. So things are very uncertain. Again, loads of cars, the very wide cars, remember, as well, in such a tight area. And most accidents you can put down to just being a racing incident where it's just, no one did anything necessarily wrong and they just ended up at the same point. That's why people say that. But, I know you'll see this in a minute, Nib. Ocon being almost Singapore 2017 there by
wow,
Vettel and his teammate Alonso. And then
you'll see Ocon lock up.
Yeah. So, thank God, because that could have been a really nasty accident there. He lost both of his front tyres. But, yeah, most incidents on a first lap are racing incidents. Because, again, with the way how unusual a first lap is, most of the time, nothing really can be done in terms of avoiding accidents. That's really what it comes down to, whether it was an avoidable accident or not. When we say racing incident, meaning it was unavoidable given the trajectory of the corner, the grip of the track, the conditions, all of that. With that incident, with Verstappen, like I said, I don't think Verstappen really could have done anything differently than what he did. With Hamilton, I believe he could have. He could have gone around the outside instead of going to the inside. He did carry too much speed into the corner, and I believe Lewis Hamilton could have done more to avoid that crash. I know other people will believe differently, but I believe he could have done more to avoid that crash, because I've seen people try to throw up from the inside there and it not result in that. So, like I said, I just
on Hamilton last year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, it's not like that's the first time they've gone wheel to wheel at Copse Corner before. We've seen, plenty of the last few years where they've done, cars putting their cars up the inside, and that's not happened. I mean, we did have Grosjean and Sainz in 2018, but that one, if you go look at that one, I think Sainz squeezed Grosjean to the very inside of the curve, so it was a completely different incident where Sainz squeezed Grosjean as far to the inside as possible. That one was different. Verstappen was not squeezing Hamilton onto the black and white curb. So, like I said, the reason I don't believe it's a racing incident is because I don't believe Hamilton did everything he could to avoid the crash, which is really, it's in the rule book. In terms of when drivers get penalties, it's whether again, could you have avoided the crash, and did you cause an unnecessary collision, which I believe that's what that will fall under for Hamilton and Verstappen. I think it'll be Hamilton getting a penalty for causing an unnecessary collision, as the race will resume at 15:42, which is in 10 minutes. So 10 minutes to go until the race is resumed. It's been a very long delay. It's been, 40 minutes by the time we get resuming again?
Yeah, but I mean, as we talked about, it's because of the electronic stuff with the Red Bull, and them having to switch it off with the computers.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, oh shit, I actually forgot what I was about to say. I just want to say that I think Karen Chandok pointed out that Verstappen actually opened up the steering a little bit before the contact was initiated. So, yeah, if you're saying that Verstappen turned in on Hamilton, I disagree on that for sure. And because we are about to have another break, I think I'm going to go to the toilet again. So I'll be back. I'll be back again shortly.
As just seeing further replays of the incident, hopefully we see a Verstappen on board. Because I didn't actually notice necessarily an opening of the steering. But if you open the steering up, then normally when in a wheel-to-wheel battle, that's you allowing the other driver room when you open the steering up, to just make sure you can both get through the corner just about okay, but obviously maintain your car ahead of the rival, whoever your rival is. So that is indeed the case then. Again, I think Verstappen tried his best to avoid an accident there. We read out some more comments, though, about this incident before we get into the Grand Prix. Stuber says Hamilton cannot handle pressure. Well, I think he can. He's won 7 world championships. Hamilton did not carry too much speed. Hamilton was not ahead. Max's wheel was already flying through the air before his entire car went off. His entire car went off the track. Well, again, Hamilton, I believe he did. Because if he didn't carry too much speed into the corner, he probably would have just about clipped that inside black and white curb. And again, he wasn't as far over to the right as he probably could have been. At the point where they got, say, past that wall where the old pit wall used to be at Silverstone. And yeah, Hamilton, was definitely not ahead of Verstappen going into the corner. No way at all. Verstappen was definitely just about ahead. And no, Hamilton did not do it deliberately. Stop it. Let's not get into that. Badger abroad in Thailand says, I've noticed that your friend often needs toilet breaks. This can be a sign of cancer. Please urge him to get tested. I don't think it's... I'm going to be honest here. I don't really think that's the case. I mean, if you drink a lot of water, you go to a toilet a lot. I know this because I drink a lot of water, so... No. Hamilton should just admit he misjudged. I mean, he probably will after the race if he does get a penalty and you know, looks back on it. We'll see. Louise Cornforth, I think it is. If I mispronounced your name, I'm very sorry. There's both are at fault. More emphasis on Hamilton because he was behind. They're both supercharged with the championship so close. I think Hamilton will get a penalty, though. I completely understand where you're coming from. I just think, again, Hamilton, because it was him, again, just slightly too quick into the corner, I just think he will get the penalty for that because, again, I just don't think he'll be able to... I just don't think he made enough of a effort to avoid, if you know what I mean. And to be honest, Hamilton is a bit lucky that he didn't get a puncture from Verstappen when he was squeezing him to the inside of turn 6. So Hamilton was kind of asking for it, I have to say, from that incident. And as it stands, of course, Max Verstappen is out of the Grand Prix. As it stands, if Hamilton was to finish in second place, Hamilton will close the gap from 33 points to 15, which is, I mean, Verstappen would still be in a decent position, but it would really start to make things a lot closer again. But I do believe Hamilton will get a penalty, and I'm hoping the FIA will not wait until after the session. They've got to make a decision before, hopefully, the race gets underway because, you know, it's going to have an effect on Hamilton's race, so he might as well know right now what his punishment is. So we need to see. Jack says, personally, it's 50-50 for me, but dude, these comments... Yeah, I know. People, you know, say some wacky stuff sometimes in the heat at the moment. It's just the way it is. I don't think necessarily a lot of the people believe some of the things they're saying, such as Hamilton did it on purpose, or Max did it on purpose, or whatever. Erin says, if Perez only got a 5-second penalty for his contact last race, that's what I would expect the same penalty for. Well, yeah, as well. I mean, that was, you could argue, a bit of a 50-50. I mean, I know certain people did actually argue that. And Perez, as you said, he got a 5-second penalty. So I think for the second one I'm talking about, not the first one with Charles Leclerc in Austria. Moonwalker says, I'd say a penalty for sure, but what type of penalty would it be? Race position or time? It'll be time, obviously. I don't think it'll be a proper stop-go penalty, like a 10-second stop-go penalty like we used to have back in the day. I don't think it'll be that. That's too harsh. I think what it'll probably be is a 5-second time penalty, maybe 10 seconds at the absolute worst. But I think most likely it will be a 5-second time penalty for Lewis Hamilton there, which won't affect his result, because if he passes Leclerc within the first 5 laps of the restart of this race and then pulls a 5-second gap to Bottas, he'll win the Grand Prix. It won't matter, which I have to say is not really punishment, is it, for taking out another driver at the first lap of a Grand Prix. So we can have our thoughts on that later. But one thing I will say is I'm probably going to do a proper incident analysis from my point of view later tonight in my race review, which of course, don't forget to come along to that, and I'll probably then record that part of the stream and upload it for you guys tomorrow to have a further say after a day, you know, of thinking about, you know, the complexities of the incident, as will be underway in just a moment. Now, anyway, let's try if we can and forget Max Verstappen, and try now and focus on the Grand Prix, because we do have a Grand Prix still to go. I mean, it's only lap 3 out of 52, and the race will be getting underway in, a couple minutes' time. I don't know if it'll be a standing restart. I think it will. But yeah, this is the grid for the restart of the race. Charles Leclerc is in the lead. Amazing turn of events. Hamilton second, Bottas third, Norris fourth, Ricciardo fifth, and then Vettel, Alonso, Sainz, Raikkonen, and Ocon complete the top 10. Gotta say, Kimi Raikkonen, what a start by him. 4 positions on the first lap, and didn't have a tyre advantage this time. And then you got Stroll, Gasly, Giovinazzi, Russell, Tsunoda, Schumacher, Latifi, Mazepin, Perez, Verstappen. Of course, Max Verstappen is out of the British Grand Prix because he'll be just joining us. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen made serious contact at Copse Corner on the first lap, sending Verstappen crashing into the barriers. And that's why Max Verstappen is out of the Grand Prix. His first retirement from a race since the Sakir Grand Prix of 2020. Hasn't retired from a race so far this season. That's his first... Oh yeah, Baku, sorry. He did.
Do you want to guess how many G's Verstappen's impact was into the wall?
50?
Yeah, 51.
Yeah, that's... I was thinking maybe I was a bit ambitious with that, but yeah, that's a lot. And you could see, really, as soon as it happened and he was flying to the barriers, I was wincing a bit myself, even though I was screaming at the same time, because when a car flies off at that corner, it is a bit of a serious moment, as the reformation lap, I guess you could call it, is about to get underway, as we're 25 seconds away from the safety car leading the cars back out for the restart. And Nib, with the grid we have, would you expect here a Mercedes 1-2 now that Verstappen's out?
Depending on what sort of penalty Hamilton would get, then you'd probably expect it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'd say that now Bottas is probably favourite to win the Grand Prix, wouldn't you? You would certainly say that? Who knows, a Ricciardo podium might happen after all.
Well, yeah, if he passes his teammate and Leclerc, then yeah, definitely it's possible. It's definitely possible, but I don't think it will happen because I think Norris has just slightly enough speed to just about remain ahead, even though Ricciardo will be very close with him through the Grand Prix as now the cars exit the pit lane. And the thing is, with Bottas, if he remains behind Hamilton, even if he's not too far behind, I think Mercedes will tell Bottas to drop back. If Hamilton does have a penalty of, say, 5 seconds, I think they'll tell Bottas to drop back over 5 seconds. Because if Hamilton was to win this race and get the fastest lap, then Hamilton would cut the lead down to 7 points. So they obviously would want that rather than Hamilton only cutting the lead down to 15 or 14 points. So I think Mercedes will try their best to engineer. And yet it will be a standing start. So basically what we had on the first lap. Hopefully no crashes this time that cause a red flag. And yeah, I just don't think they're going to allow Valtteri Bottas to really compete with Hamilton. I think they'll try their best to engineer Hamilton winning this race, even if he gets a 5-second or even a 10-second penalty in this Grand Prix, as Leclerc, Hamilton, Bottas, the front of the field, are just coming through Copse now, where, of course, that incident happened. They're now, of course, halfway through the lap, as now the mid-pack comes through as well. And we'll see what the Grand Prix now turns out to be after Verstappen is out of it. I would expect Mercedes to win this 1 and 2, because I don't think Charles Leclerc will have the pace to win this Grand Prix. He might have the pace to get on the podium, which would be a great result for him, but I'm not sure he's going to win this Grand Prix because I just think the Mercedes are too quick, especially down the straights here at Silverstone. As the safety car is now pulling away, Leclerc now becomes the leader of the pack, but of course it is a standing restart, so it's not like a safety car restart where the front driver controls the pace of the rest. As now they come through the end of the lap to the front of the field. And again, it's Leclerc, Hamilton, Bottas, Norris, Ricciardo, Vettel, Alonso, Sainz, Raikkonen, Ocon, Stroll, Gasly, Giovinazzi, Russell, Tsunoda, Schumacher, Latifi, Mazepin, and Perez is your grid for this standing restart, with Max Verstappen out of the British Grand Prix. As Leclerc now comes through the exit of the chicane. Now Hamilton and Bottas do. Leclerc now rounding that final corner very slowly. Of course, doesn't want to absolutely burn out his tyres. Wants to keep them in best condition he can. And Leclerc now on the grid. And now so is Hamilton and Bottas. And as well, the two McLarens. And with Verstappen out, it does give a chance to those midfield teams to get a podium here. You could argue that Ferrari and McLaren in terms of size are not really midfield teams, but in terms of pure pace, they are. And getting a podium is not a regular thing that, say, it used to be as Ricciardo there. I've got to say, it's pulled up very sharpish to his pit box there. That was very impressive. As just indicate we're about to start, or basically have started, lap 4 out of 52, and the restart will be in just a moment. As now Sergio Perez, of course, the only man on the hard compound tyre, comes through now that final corner to line up at the very back of the starting grid. Just about now. There you go. And now the lights come on. The restart of the British Grand Prix. Let's see if Charles Leclerc can hang on to the lead. Lights out and away we go on the restart. And Leclerc looks as though he has maintained just about the lead of the Grand Prix. He has a Norris, I think, is up into third place there for McLaren. And we now got Daniel Ricciardo possibly inside of the Mercedes there. And trying to now go round the outside of the Mercedes. I think it is Daniel Ricciardo. Yes, it is. There's an Alpine on the inside of him. And now Ferrari on the inside of an Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel, who's had a bit of a poor start here. But it is Leclerc leading from Hamilton second. And Lando Norris is up to third as a Ferrari there trying to sail around the outside of Sebastian Vettel at turn 6. And he does, as there's now an Alpine trying to go right round the outside. Oh, and Sebastian Vettel has repeated his Ferrari days and goes spinning once again. As now, Alonso round the outside of Ricciardo as he kept it on the track. He's done it again to a McLaren as he's let Ricciardo back through there. So he must have gone off the circuit there. As he did go off the circuit. I'm pretty sure he did. As it's Leclerc leading from Hamilton in second position. And then in third, like I said, Lando Norris, Valtteri Bottas close behind. You got Ricciardo fifth, Alonso in sixth, Carlos Sainz is in P7. Lance Stroll has had an amazing start. He's up to 8th. And he started the race in 14th. Raikkonen 9th. Now Ocon 10th. As Hamilton does the fastest lap. Now Norris does the fastest lap. Now Ricciardo and Alonso. Now the rest of the field, obviously, because it's a standing restart. Ocon 10th. And then you've got Giovinazzi in P11. Gasly is P... Oh, and someone runs off there. I don't know who it was, isn't it? It's Raikkonen. He's gone wide at turn 1, I think. Someone went wide at turn 1.
Ricciardo has an engine issue. I think there's a little bit of smoke coming out of Ricciardo's engine, I thought, through turn 1.
As Lewis Hamilton has a 10-second time penalty for that collision with Max Verstappen. That is a very big penalty, but he deserved a penalty of some sorts. We'll get into later whether it deserves to be...
got a freaking issue.
Yeah, it looks as though he has. We'll have to see in a moment as Carlos Sainz is now up into 6th place. Just want to update the lap counter, though. Minutes to be on lap 5 out of 52, not 4. As just trying to see who ran wide. I think it was Kimi Raikkonen who ran wide at turn 1 in the Alfa Romeo. Carlos Sainz, by the way, is up to 6th place. And Raikkonen down to 10th. Giovinazzi 11th. And Nib, I'll let you take us through the start as it's appearing now, I think.
Yeah, I can't quite get up to live on my feed at the moment. But yeah, we're just about getting to the start now. But it was a bloody good start once again by Charles Leclerc there. Bottas absolutely nowhere, as per usual. Alonso, beautiful move around the outside of Vettel, doing what he did yesterday almost, and then he goes the wide way around again, trying to have a look up the inside of Ricciardo. Forces Ricciardo a little bit wide. I thought there might have been a little bit of contact for a moment there, but there was not, as we're on board with Norris now. Gets a very good start. Just quite comfortably beats Bottas off the line, quite comfortably up into third. place, but yeah, I mean, it looks like the. I don't know. It certainly was Raikkonen running wide, but sorry, at the moment I'm so frustrated because this is actually a good weekend for Ricciardo, and then his engine smoking. And was there a little bit of contact? There was. I thought there was some contact there between Alonso and Ricciardo. So yeah, well, as we're just seeing Vettel, he did what Alonso did in practice, just a little bit later on the corner, having a little bit of a spin there at Luffield.
Very embarrassing, I have to say, considering we thought those would have been cut out now. And Raikkonen just simply lost the rear end slightly through, completely cut out turn 2, and then just headed straight for turn 3. I've got to say, I don't think Ricciardo does have an issue because he's only 1.7 behind Bottas, and he's not losing that much time, so I don't think he has a problem as of yet. It might just be the under tray hitting the floor. That might be a reason, or something like that, but I don't think he has an issue at the moment. Hopefully, he doesn't have an issue as we're about to begin lap 7 at 52, and Leclerc not just leading the race, he's leading it by 1.5 seconds, and Hamilton at the moment not really able to get right in, within a second of him. Very impressive by Charles Leclerc this at the moment, as Gasly, I just want to update that Gasly is actually in P11, ahead of Giovinazzi 12th, Russell is 13th, and then you've got Perez already up to 14th place. He's looking good, and then you've got Tsunoda in 15th, Latifi is in 16th position, and then Schumacher 17th, Mazepin 18th, and Sebastian Vettel is now right on the back of the pack in 19th. He's only a couple tenths behind Nikita Mazepin. In fact, he's just overtaken Nikita Mazepin for 18th, so clearly his tyres are in decent enough condition for the moment. As just seeing Pierre Gasly here, following Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen running a tad wide on the exit of Copse Corner there. And Gasly will be hoping to try and get DRS here because, of course, the Alfa Romeo car's not very quick down the straights. And also, I think Raikkonen might be struggling a bit in the conditions right now, as Hamilton is starting to gain, I think, time on this lap. He's gained 3 or 4 tenths of a second, I think, on this lap. And yet, Lewis Hamilton does do the new fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and gains by a couple tenths of a second on Charles Leclerc. Fastest lap of 132.7, which is about 2.5 seconds slower than the pace up front in the sprint race, as Sergio Perez has overtaken another car. And here's a replay of it on George Russell up to Stowe Corner, gets in the slipstream, and Russell just lets him go because, of course, Perez in a much faster car compared to Russell. As Perez now, his next target will be Antonio Giovinazzi in P12. It'll be a bit hard though, because now DRS I think is open or available. And Giovinazzi, I think, might just be within a second of Gasly. There's a bit of a DRS train now starting to form behind Kimi Raikkonen. So we'll see what happens there. Sebastian Vettel now passes compatriot Mick Schumacher for 17th place, as Perez within a second clearly of the Alfa Romeo of Antonio Giovinazzi. Hamilton is starting to gain time now, really, on Leclerc, gaining about 3 tenths of a second on this lap on the Monegasque driver out front. So once Hamilton gets it within a second and gets that DRS open, I think Leclerc's going to have to, well, he's not going to have a lot to defend with, put it that way. As, yeah, the gap has come down another couple tenths on that lap. It's now on lap 9 out of 52. And probably in about 10 laps' time, I would say, we'll see quite a few pit stops. Of course, with the first 4 laps not really being much of anything, because it was affected by that crash, it will help them go a bit longer into the race than they were planning. As Hamilton only a tad quicker in Sector 3 on the previous lap. Hamilton about 1.1, now 1.2 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. Norris in third, doing well to just be about 1.1 seconds ahead of Bottas, as Perez passes Giovinazzi down into Brooklyn. So Sergio Perez is into P12 and making very good progress, Perez. Remember, he is the only driver out there on the hard tyre. So we'll keep an eye out for that, but he's really making a lot of progress out there. As Hamilton still unable to get himself within a second of Leclerc, which the longer it takes him to do that, the harder, of course, it will be for him to get a victory. And remember, he does have a 10-second penalty, which, of course, at his pit stop, he will have to serve. So, really, if Leclerc can maintain this pace, then you could argue that Leclerc right now is looking great for victory. Because, again, add 10 seconds to Hamilton's time. Hamilton would then be half a pit stop behind, or say nearly half a pit stop behind Charles Leclerc. So Charles Leclerc is looking really good here. And I'm not over-exaggerating. He really does look really good here for a possible race victory. Because he's not, even though maybe he's losing a tad here or there, they're lapping around the same speed. And Lando Norris, by the way, is within 5 seconds of the lead and actually slightly starting to gain on Charles Leclerc. So Norris is now coming into play. And yeah, in terms of victory, it's not just the two Mercedes. Could have anyone out of that top 4, I think, possibly winning this Grand Prix. As so you're Leclerc leading by about 1.1 seconds. And then you've got Norris third. Norris is about 4.5 seconds off the lead, but gaining on the leader of the Grand Prix. And then Bottas is fourth, about 1.1 seconds behind Norris. Ricciardo fifth, only 9 seconds off the lead, which is not great, but not terrible. I mean, he's still 1.5 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz, and he is still in the top 5. So he's still having a pretty good race at the moment. Alonso is now under pressure from Lance Stroll, who is in 8th place and now within a second of Fernando Alonso and has the DRS wide open. Now it gets difficult for Sergio Perez, because now Perez, his next target is Pierre Gasly, but Perez has DRS on Raikkonen, so going to be hard for Perez to get a move done here on Gasly. Norris continues to gain on Leclerc, and really, Nib, with Hamilton having that penalty, it might be Leclerc, Hamilton, and Norris, the 3 fighting for victory here.
Yeah, well, Bottas ain't winning because he's, just doing a Bottas. So, yeah, I mean, Hamilton, at the moment, though, Alonso is very slow in 7th place. So I think that we could probably see Perez come through and probably finish in 7th or 6th in this race. I certainly wouldn't rule out Hamilton, though. I think in clear air, perhaps he might run a little bit quicker than what he is right now. Of course, he was saying that his rears were getting hot a little bit earlier. So, I know, it's an interesting one. I mean, we knew Ferrari's pace was actually pretty good this weekend on the medium tyre. They're actually right there with McLaren, and Lando, they're all lapping about at a similar pace at the moment, which I didn't really expect, if I was going to be honest with you.
I don't think anyone did, and Leclerc actually on that last lap was almost a quarter of a second quicker than Hamilton, and even quicker, almost 2 tenths quicker in the second sector, where normally the Mercedes is quite a bit quicker. And in qualifying, the Friday qualifying, Hamilton was 3.5 tenths quicker than the fastest Ferrari through there. So Leclerc, he's now pulled the gap to 1.8 seconds. So now 2 seconds. So Hamilton is really struggling out there for pace, because, he's not in the dirty air, but he's not exactly within a second of him, is he? So he's just generally struggling for pace, which is something we saw in Austria, where the Mercedes in this heat just doesn't seem to have really any real grip out there at the moment, because Valtteri Bottas is not even within a second of Lando Norris right now. Bottas has dropped about 1.5 seconds almost behind Lando Norris. So the Mercedes cars just don't really seem to have any real pace today at the moment, of course, because it can change. We have 40 laps to go. It's an air temperature, by the way, of 29 degrees Celsius. and a track temperature of
29.
and a track temperature of 50 degrees Celsius. So that's probably the hottest track temp we've had at Silverstone probably ever. And like we said before the race, the Mercedes cars do struggle in the heat. And I think we are seeing that because they're just not really going anywhere right now. As we're just seeing Ricciardo ahead of Sainz there. Ricciardo about, 1.7 seconds ahead of Sainz. And he's doing pretty well there in 5th place. And I think is actually starting to pull away from Carlos Sainz by a 10th or so per lap. So Ricciardo is still doing pretty well. He's only, 6 seconds behind Norris at the moment, so still plenty to play for him. Still, Gasly stuck within a second of Kimi Raikkonen. And Gasly, of course, in P11 on now lap 13 out of 52. Charles Leclerc leading by 1.6 seconds from Lewis Hamilton. Norris in 3rd, about 5.5 off the lead. Bottas about 7 seconds off the lead. Ricciardo 5th, about 11.5 seconds off the lead. Ricciardo's pace, actually, the last few laps has been, I think, as good as the leaders, because he was 11 seconds behind a couple laps ago, and it's still about 11 seconds. So he is now really starting to get in the groove of things, Ricciardo, which is good. As Perez is still stuck behind Pierre Gasly and Kimi Raikkonen. And until Gasly can get past Raikkonen or one of these two makes a mistake, Perez is probably just going to remain behind these two, because just nothing's really happening at the moment unless Perez can get an amazing exit at one of the corners. But in the dirty air, that is pretty hard to do. The turbulent dirty air coming from the car ahead, as Perez now coming through Maggots and Beckett's and now through Chapel. And his exit onto the hangar straight is not bad, but it's nothing special. He now gets in the slipstream of Pierre Gasly. And will he dive up the inside here of Gasly? Nope, he will not. And Gasly's not going to let him through, because Gasly is focusing on the car ahead of him, which of course is Raikkonen in 10th, as Charles Leclerc leads by 1.8 seconds, now 1.7. So Leclerc maintaining a comfortable lead over Lewis Hamilton right now, which, like we said, is not something we expected to see. And if these guys on the mediums can go another, say, 7-8 laps, then they should be able to get to the end of the Grand Prix on the hard tyre. So if they can do, another 7 or 8 laps, and we should have a one-stop race here. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Go on.
I'll just interject. Leclerc's just been told over team radio that he's on plan B. So I'd assume that plan A for today would have been a 2-stop if things had gone a bit more normally. So you'd probably assume that Leclerc's now on a 1-stop.
Yeah, you'd have to, and I think it's the right way to go, because he's not exactly under any real threat right now. He's not having to get offline and defend or anything like that, and he's comfortably out front doing his pace. Obviously has no one in front of him, no one causing him to burn his tires up, and he's in great shape right now, as he's still about 1.7 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the lead on now lap 15 out of 52, and looking very, very strong, as still Sergio Perez held up behind Gasly and Raikkonen. And honestly, for Perez, if this is going to be a one-stop race for everyone, then his strategy is not really played out anywhere near as well as it probably they were hoping for. Because that hard tyre, I mean, it's a good tyre, but he would have been hoping he'd be doing a one-stop compared to the other people doing a two-stop. And by the looks of it, a lot of people out there trying to eke it out to, say, lap 22, lap 23, before they come in for their one and only pit stop, as Lewis Hamilton is actually now on lap 15 starting to gain on Leclerc. Now he's cut the gap back down to 1.1 seconds. And Norris is, just to update you about him, he is 5.5 seconds still off the lead. So Norris is lapping at about the same speed as the leaders. Ricciardo is lapping, a couple tenths of a lap slower than Norris, which is not too bad considering how slow he's been in the past few races. As Leclerc is still about 1.1 ahead as they kind of come through to the end of lap 15. Reminder though, Lewis Hamilton has a 10-second time penalty that he will have to serve at his pit stop. So if he does a new fastest lap of 1:32.7, which is only slightly quicker than he did before. Now Valtteri Bottas does a new fastest lap of 1:32.6. But when Hamilton serves that penalty, he will be behind Norris and Bottas if Norris and Bottas have a normal pit stop. So Hamilton not heading for a good result here. He really isn't. And if he's going to win this race, he's going to have to overtake 3 cars probably in the Grand Prix to win. Well, at least 2 if, say, Valtteri Bottas was to let him through if that situation was to arise. But not looking good for Hamilton in terms of capitalising on Verstappen's retirement, even though Hamilton caused Verstappen's retirement, as this is definitely the most amount of laps that Ferrari have led in, well, 2 years. The last time I remember them leading a Grand Prix like this, for the, say, first stint of a Grand Prix, was, I think, Mexico 2019, where they were leading for the first stint there. As Hamilton now is within a second, has DRS open down the hangar straight, and now does start to close in on Charles Leclerc. So Hamilton now starting to get after the Ferrari, but still not close enough. Obviously,
apparently, it's had some engine issues, and that's why the gap has closed.
Okay. I'm guessing overheating issues. Is that what it was?
I have no idea. Leclerc reported over the radio, no, the engine cuts, the engine stops. And he's like, what was that? Let me know.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. As Valtteri Bottas does another new fastest lap. And he's cut the gap down to 6.9 seconds between himself and the leader, even though he is in 4th position. And the order remains as it is. I've got to say, the midfield are not lapping as slow as they were compared to the leaders earlier on. So the gaps are not massively spreading out as quickly as I thought they would. I have to say, I think Sebastian Vettel is in a real bad position because he's in 17th and just not really able to get anywhere near the back of Nicholas Latifi here for an overtake, as Hamilton is now clearly within a second of Charles Leclerc. And they come through cops now into maggots. Hamilton 7/10 of a second behind. Black and white flag for Gasly for track limits. Black and white flag, if you're wondering, means a warning. So if you do that again, you'll get a penalty. As Leclerc now starting to weave slightly down the hangar straight, but Hamilton is not going to get close enough into Stowe to make a move because the braking zone is not that big. You go for a move there. As just looking at the order, and it's remaining as the same. Norris lapping at the same speed pretty much as the leaders. Bottas, of course, lapping a tad quicker, as Hamilton now does the new fastest lap. Norris probably a 10th or so slower on this lap than he was the previous laps, but the top 4 are lapping pretty much at the same speed. Hamilton does a 1:32.2, and now we are on lap 18 and should be getting into the pit stops, I think, in the next 5 laps or so at the soonest here in this Grand Prix. As Leclerc still driving very well as he comes now through Luffield, which is a lot easier on the exit than it used to be, and now comes through the old pit straight. Here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton just showing off his tyres, and he's got a bit opening up on the inside of his right front, but his tyres don't actually look too bad, considering what I was expecting, to be honest. As Charles Leclerc has now pulled the lead to a second on this lap. Hamilton does have still DRS because he was within a second in the detection point, so Hamilton still will close up to about 7/10 behind, but he's nowhere near close enough to go for a move. And really, like I said, if Lewis Hamilton is going to win this race, because of the pace of Norris and Bottas behind, Lewis Hamilton is going to have to pass his teammate Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc to win this Grand Prix, because he'll have to take that 10-second penalty, and that will drop him, of course, behind those 4. Just to note, though, Nib, what's the pit stop gap here? Is it 24 seconds at Silverstone? Can't
Isn't it more
remember.
because of how long the pit lane is though?
It might be like 27, 28.
Yeah, I honestly cannot remember for the life of me. I feel like I almost need a notebook to make sure I write it down so that I actually remember.
Well, normally they show it on screen, but they haven't showed it so far. As Kimi Raikkonen, Sergio Perez, and Russell and Vettel as well. They have all come into the pit. So there you go. The first pitters. And what tyre will Perez go on to? Will be the medium compound tyre. That to me feels like a two-stop. Yeah, that's a two-stop there for Perez. And we'll see what the others do and what tyres they go on to as I'll update the order just a moment as it all settles down. But I was going to say, if Leclerc pits now, he'll probably come out in 8th place between, he'll come out between Stroll and Ocon. And of course, they'll go up a position, so he would come out, like I said, in 8th place. As Hamilton's dropped back on this lap a bit, but he's still kind of close behind. So Gasly now is up to 10th because Raikkonen has pitted. Giovinazzi is up to 11th. And then you've got Tsunoda up into 12th because, again, of people pitting. Latifi, I think, is in 13th. As Charles Leclerc does the fastest lap and pulls. And Hamilton says blisters on both sides now and pushing. Leclerc was 7/10 of a second quicker, I think, on that lap compared to Hamilton. Brilliant lap there for Charles Leclerc. I'll just update that we are on lap 20 now, 52 to 32 remaining, as Ricciardo now starting to struggle. Now got Carlos Sainz within a second of him, as Ocon has now come into the pits as well, obviously reacting to cars behind us. Perez now getting within a second of Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen defending to the inside. Perez throws it up the inside of Stowe corner. Raikkonen still holding it around the outside. And can he hold on to that? Yes, he can. Perez will try to go around the outside. Raikkonen defends. Great racing between the two, who have tremendous respect for others on circuit. And they get through just about okay. Now Perez down to turn 1. Oh, there you go. And Raikkonen round the outside holds it. This is brilliant defensive driving from Kimi Raikkonen. Perez now throws it down the inside. Raikkonen still holding on for dear life around the outside at every single bloody corner. And now, surely Perez will get the move done down into Brooklands on this DRS straight. And yeah, Kimi Raikkonen is going to have to let Perez go here. Great, though, defensive driving from Raikkonen, though. And he is now Raikkonen down to 14th. As Gasly's now up to 9th. Giovinazzi 10th. And Tsunoda 11th. As Ocon has come out ahead of that Perez-Raikkonen fight. But Nib, great defensive driving there for Raikkonen to keep Perez behind for so long.
Yeah, that was pretty bloody good, wasn't it, mate? Hopefully we see, I was about to say, hopefully we see a full replay once again, because for half of the battle we're watching it just in that little mini window. Of course, only showing now the replay of the overtake into Brooklands down the straight, of course. But I think it's time for McLaren to probably pit Daniel Ricciardo. He seemed to have. Oh well, there we go.
Yep, it's literally as soon as you said Ricciardo in the pit lane now on lap 21, and Ricciardo will come out. Let's see where he comes out. In a nice gap between Gasly and Giovinazzi, so he's got not loads of clean air, but enough clean air to set a good couple initial laps here. Gets foot in the door on these tyres. So Sainz is now up to 5th, Alonso up to 6th, Stroll 7th, Gasly 8th, and Ricciardo in 9th. So Ricciardo should be, considering he's come out still in the points, he should be safe now clearly for a points finish. But how will he do compared to Carlos Sainz? We'll have to see. As by the way, Charles Leclerc leading on lap 21. He is 1.8 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Norris is about 6.9 off the lead. And Bottas 1.7 behind Norris, meaning he's about 8.5 at best, 8.5 seconds behind the leader, Charles Leclerc. Leclerc does another new fastest lap as Lando Norris now comes into the pits. I think McLaren have pitted, honestly, at a very good time. Because this really is the earliest you want to pit. And it will give them some good, fresh tyres as Leclerc. Twice now, setting laps in the 1 minute 31 as Norris comes in. And, what's happened here? Why was that so slow? I didn't see any obvious issues there. Did you, Nib?
It must have been with the right rear tyre then, because that was probably the only tyre that we didn't see.
Oh, that's going to cost him. to Valtteri Bottas now, unless he can put in a couple very good outlaps. That's going to cost him quite a bit now to Valtteri Bottas, which is a shame because he was in a podium position. I mean, he still could finish on the podium with Hamilton's penalty. We'll have to see. As now Sainz is up to 4th because of Norris pitting. And now Norris comes out in P6 as Mercedes are surely going to pit Valtteri Bottas here to gain what is a net 2nd position. As Norris also has a bit of traffic ahead of him, Fernando Alonso. So yeah, that's just such a shame. They would have got him out in that big gap between Sainz and Alonso if that problem had not happened. And yeah, it was the right rear tyre, as you said, Nib. Took about 3 or 4 goes to get it to tighten, which is a shame. That's about 3.5, 4 seconds longer than it really needed to be.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, that probably puts him out of contention to win the race because he was hanging there, keeping himself with the possibility of winning this race. But yeah, probably puts him out of that window as now we have Valtteri Bottas coming in to make his pit stop.
Yeah, and his pit stop is very good. 2.2 seconds, almost 4 seconds quicker than Norris. So I don't think Norris will get back ahead. So Sainz now up to 3rd. Alonso will he go up to 4th, Alonso? We'll have to see. I don't think he will. And no, Valtteri Bottas comes out. Oh no, comes out alongside. And Alonso, will he go ahead, Alonso? Yes, he will. Norris will come out right behind. Norris locks up in all the excitement that he sees his rival right ahead of him. So Alonso has briefly come out ahead, but I think Bottas is about to depose Alonso a 4th. And yeah, Alonso just lets him through. Valtteri Bottas is now up to 4th, and Norris, if he wants to stay with Bottas, needs to get past very, very quickly. I've got to say, Alonso's line through left field is so good, especially in the mid part. Really gains him a lot of time there. But yeah, Valtteri Bottas jumps Lando Norris and is into 4th place and a net 2nd. It's Hamilton 1.8 at the moment behind Charles Leclerc in the battle for victory. Now 2 seconds behind Charles Leclerc as they're about to begin lap 24. Currently, Ferrari 2 cars on the podium. Of course, Carlos Sainz has not pitted yet. As Norris, if he's going to get past Alonso, he's got to do it really in the next lap or so because he's losing so much time here to the rival. I've got to say, Alonso's doing well to remain within DRS, and the amount of grip that Norris gains through Stowe, that is absolutely incredible. Just slips it down the inside, going into the chicane. I know fresh tyres are good here, but Jesus Christ, that was incredible. It was like he was in a different formula compared to Alonso, as Alonso now down into 6th. Alonso, though, is driving well, driving very well, considering the car's not that quick for that position, of course, as we're now on lap 24 out of 52, as Lance Stroll, who was racing Alonso but dropped back a bit, has now pitted. Is a replay. Alonso just didn't really get to the apex. Norris was not just hitting the apex, he was all over the entry curb to Stowe, and then easily got the move done down into the entry of the final chicane.
Just a little update on Max Verstappen, Chaz. At the medical centre, he seemed all okay, but he's just gone to hospital to get a head CT scan because he's felt a little bit dizzy after the crash.
Okay. It's an update there for you guys about Max, and hopefully he'll be a-okay. As I've noticed, not just Lance Stroll was pitted, Antonio Giovinazzi has also pitted, and he's now down in 15th. Let me just update that. So Raikkonen up to 13th, Russell up to 14th, Giovinazzi 15th in the Alfa Romeo. Is now on lap 25 out of 52, and Leclerc continues to pull away from Hamilton, now 2.5 seconds. I've got to say, Nib, I think Leclerc's won this. Unless Hamilton produces this amazing speed, I don't see how Leclerc's going to lose this, do you? He's very quick right now. He's quicker than Hamilton.
Yeah, it's been amazing. We're speaking about Ferrari might struggle with their tyres in the heat, but it seems as if perhaps Mercedes are struggling a little bit more than what Ferrari are. I think one thing that's probably for sure is Alonso's coming into pit now. Let's see how his pit stop is as he goes onto the hard compound tyre. A little bit slow on the rear right, much like Lando. It was a 5.4 second pit stop, not what Fernando Alonso needed after he's done a very good job here at the first part of this race. But I think we can say if Verstappen was in this race and held the lead after the Cops, he probably would have walked this race because I think the pace is quite slow.
Yeah, it is. As Lance Stroll, because of that slow pit stop that you talked about there, Nib, Lance Stroll has jumped Fernando Alonso. He was right behind him. As now Alonso gets in the slipstream, DRS wide open. Will he get back past? Yes, he will straight away. But Stroll is a lot closer now than he was before. So that pit stop very almost costing Alpine dearly in the battle for very important points now that you got Verstappen out of action. As we're now on lap 26 out of 52. Halfway through the British Grand Prix, just want to say, now they've got a bit of a lull, as Carlos Sainz does the fastest lap of the race. I was just going to say, Sainz is cutting the lead down a few tenths a lap, so Sainz is really quick right now, as saying that Valtteri Bottas has the fastest lap, only though 4 tenths quicker, and Sainz hasn't pitted yet. Shows you how quick Ferrari are today. But yeah, I was just going to say, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because we will be doing qualifying and race watch-alongs for every race weekend in 2021. Of course, the next Grand Prix being in Hungary in 2 weeks' time, so don't forget to sub for that. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can in supporting us, as they're just showing a replay of Alonso's slow pit stop. And then they're just showing him overtaking Lance Stroll with the DRS wide open. So Alonso is up into 9th place, but that will be a net, a net 7th at the moment. So looking good is Fernando, as Russell currently in 14th place, about to be under threat from the Alfa Romeo of Antonio Giovinazzi. And yeah, the Williams just doesn't have the pace today, I'm afraid, to, really get after anyone, which is a shame. But, Russell has driven at his absolute best this weekend. There's nothing else he really could have done about where he's been this weekend. As Leclerc, by the way, leading by 2.3 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. Carlos Sainz is third. Also hasn't pitted yet. Carlos Sainz is actually lapping just as quick, if not quicker, than the two leaders. Someone saying that they've missed their wife's birth to be at the F1, which I'm sure will go down well, as Sainz is about 7 seconds ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who has, of course, pitted. And then you got Norris 5th, about 4 seconds behind the Finn, and Gasly about 10 seconds behind Norris. Just want to see what the gap is, though, between Sainz and Ricciardo, because, of course, those two are racing each other very hard before Ricciardo pitted. Currently, Sainz he's very close to jumping Ricciardo. He's about 24 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. So I think realistically, Carlos Sainz will beat Ricciardo today, because even if Ricciardo comes out ahead of him, Sainz will be on much better tyres, and the Ferrari car does look, at this point, a lot quicker than the McLaren, which is not something we were expecting at all, as Lewis Hamilton comes into the pits on now lap 28 out of 52. Surely Leclerc will pit a lap later. Well, we'll see, because obviously he has to take now a 10-second penalty in his pit box. And this will cost him, surely, winning the British Grand Prix. And puts on the hard tyres and gets going again. And, it was actually not even that quick of a pit stop, because it was 14.2 when it probably should have been 12.2 or 12.5. So Hamilton comes out in 5th place, behind Sainz, who hasn't pitted yet, but also Bottas and Norris. So Lewis Hamilton, if he wants to win this Grand Prix, has to pass Lando Norris and Valtteri Bottas and pass Charles Leclerc as well, even though Leclerc will have probably a 10 or 11 second lead over him when he exits the pits, if Leclerc was to pit on this lap. And currently, guys, it's a Ferrari 1-2 on lap 28. Who would have thought that? We had a Ferrari 1-2 at Silverstone in, ever. As Leclerc continues. I was actually wrong there. They did have a 1-2, I think 2002, but to be fair, that year every race was a 1-2. As Leclerc begins lap 29 and continues round. And to be honest, he doesn't need to pit Charles Leclerc because as long as he comes out ahead of Hamilton and on fresher tyres, Leclerc will just pull away. But Leclerc,
I must say,
go on.
What was the pit stop delta?
26, 27, wasn't it?
Yeah, look at the gap to Bottas.
Oh, yeah, you're right there. It is getting a bit close. We'll see. I might be wrong on that. It might be 25. We'll see. As Carlos Sainz has pitted in the Ferrari. Oh, slow pit stop. The left front won't go on. Has it gone on? Oh, terrible pit stop. And yeah, Daniel Ricciardo will definitely be ahead of him now.
Deary me.
There you go. So Bottas is now up to second, Norris third, Hamilton fourth, and Sainz will come out in sixth place. And Sainz is about 5 seconds behind Ricciardo. Carlos Sainz definitely was going to jump Ricciardo there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he absolutely was.
And I think if Leclerc pits this lap, I think Leclerc will have it. I think he'll have it. We'll have to see, though. Yeah, Sainz. Go on.
Sorry once again, Chaz, but yeah, they're lapping at quite a similar pace, so I understand sort of why Ferrari aren't exactly pitting him, because then they think that the tyre differential will be enough, as we're watching the replay here in the lovely 8K camera. Here, as we see, the front left tyre just won't go on. It seems like the heat is malfunctioning everyone's pit stop equipment so far today.
It is. Yeah, it seems that way. As Charles Leclerc comes into the pits, puts on the hard compound tyre and a good pit stop of 2.6 seconds. And let's see if he comes out in the lead. And Charles Leclerc exit the pits now. And yeah, Bottas is nowhere near him. Charles Leclerc, 22 laps to go. Not just in the lead, he's miles ahead of everybody else.
What were we worried about?
Exactly. And Charles Leclerc at the moment is heading for an easy win. I can't believe he's...
7 seconds? I've done a crofty.
It must be a 20-second pit gap then. Incredible. As Hamilton, by the way, was 1.4 seconds quicker than Norris on that lap. Please remember, though, Hamilton did pit a few laps after Lando Norris, so that does factor in there. As Pierre Gasly 9th. Ocon's been overtook by Perez, so Perez... He's up to 10th, and then you got Gasly in 11th. So Gasly has jumped Ocon and Raikkonen through staying out longer. Now, with almost 21 laps to go, the only man, I believe, who can win this Grand Prix, other than Charles Leclerc right now, is Lewis Hamilton. If Hamilton can get his way through these two and just keep on it, then he might have a chance. But if he cannot get ahead of Norris within the next, say, 5 or so laps, then I just don't see how he'll be able to get after Charles Leclerc here, as we're now on lap 31 out of 52. And amazingly, the man on screen who's popped up on screen, Charles Leclerc is in the lead of the British Grand Prix by 7 seconds from Valtteri Bottas. And they've all pitted, by the way, so that is a real race lead. Lando Norris is third, Hamilton fourth. Hamilton, of course, suffering with that 10-second penalty for taking out Max Verstappen. Ricciardo currently fifth. And then Sainz, Tsunoda, Alonso, Stroll, Perez. Tsunoda has just pitted now for his first pit stop. Leclerc, by the way, Nib, was a second quicker than Bottas on that last lap. So Leclerc is...
He's flying.
I know, he's absolutely... I was telling you before the stream, he's always been very good here, but I didn't think it would be this good today.
I mean, just before I have to take a little moment's rest, it was Hamilton is closing into Copse. Is he going to chuck it up the inside into Copse corner? Yes, he is, and Lando lets him through into Copse. So Hamilton now up into third, and let's see if he can close in on Bottas. Well, what a silly question that is. Let's see how long it will take for him to close up onto the back of Bottas, as Leclerc is doing exactly what he did here at 2017 in F2. As I'm going to go and take a quick little break again.
As just updating that Yuki Tsunoda has come out 13th. So Tsunoda might actually nick a point here, because he has gone quite a long way into the Grand Prix. As Gasly now up into P10. Here's a replay of Hamilton and Norris, and Hamilton clearly quicker, and Norris just lets him have it because Hamilton is miles quicker, and Norris doesn't want his race affected in any negative sense, as both Stroll and Perez within a second of Fernando Alonso. A bit of a train here forming over 7th place, and we said this is where Sergio Perez was most likely going to finish. It looks as though it will be. Yeah, 7th, 8th, 9th, where Perez ends up, and that's about where he is right now. As Hamilton, it says, will be in striking distance of Valtteri Bottas. In 2 laps, Bottas will probably just let him through because of the championship. As Carlos Sainz, by the way, is already within a second of Daniel Ricciardo, so I am expecting Carlos to pass Ricciardo before the end of the Grand Prix. Carlos is quicker, in a quicker car, and also on fresher tyres. With Tsunoda, though, he is in 13th and is already within a second of Raikkonen, as AlphaTauri tell Gasly, watch your track limits, no more allowed. As Leclerc leading now by 9.5 seconds. It was 7 seconds a couple of laps ago when he pitted. It's now 9.5. And he's actually lapping quicker than Hamilton still. So even if Hamilton overtakes Bottas, Hamilton is not going to catch Charles Leclerc at this speed. Of course, there is still, 19 laps to go. But at the moment, it's looking very good. If you're a fan of the boys in red, as Carlos Sainz, now within a second of Ricciardo, really starting to close up. Was close into Stowe, but not close enough. Sergio Perez still held up in that train behind Stroll and Alonso. And Sainz, it's a shame that pit stop problem happened for him, because if it didn't, then he probably would be, he'd be ahead of Ricciardo, but he wouldn't be that far behind Norris, and he might actually be able to finish in, say, 4th place in this Grand Prix if he had not had that problem, because Norris's pace is not that great right now. Lewis Hamilton, though, interestingly, is now going slower than Valtteri Bottas, which I don't quite understand. Is it the same thing we saw in Austria, where that initial speed at the beginning of a stint goes away because of the heat? I'll have to say, but I think definitely the heat here at Silverstone is without doubt affecting them massively. As Carlos Sainz now within half a second of Ricciardo as they come now through Copse Corner. And the only problem for Sainz is, because of Ricciardo, his car's great straight line speed compared to his car, Sainz has got to make sure he gets the exit of the corners right. Because if he doesn't, then he won't ever get close enough to get a move done on Daniel Ricciardo in the battle for 5th place between Ricciardo and Sainz. Remember, these two were fighting over 6th and 7th, I think, in 2019. So they're used to battling here for position. And of course, Ricciardo spun in the last race together at Silverstone because Carlos Sainz made slight contact with him. So these two have previous at Silverstone and are yet again at the same piece of racetrack. As Sainz is now through turn 3 and 4, closing up a bit. This is where the Ferrari car is a lot better than the McLaren, as we saw in the data I showed earlier in the race preview, but cannot get close enough as of yet on the run down to Brooklands. Sainz trying to take a bit of a wider entry to try and do a bit of a switchback, as Perez right behind Lance Stroll here. And I noticed Nibu have returned. And
yeah, that's about to have a coughing fit.
And Hamilton, he's past Norris, and he's not lapping any quicker than Valtteri Bottas, really. He's now starting to gain a slight bit of time, but he's consistently 4 seconds behind. And right now, only heading for 3rd place. This is, again, the heat. That's all we can really say. It's very similar to last year's Grand Prix, their performance here, isn't it? Where they just don't seem to have consistently the pace because the heat is a major factor behind their performance here.
Yeah, exactly, Chaz. Well, thankfully I saw the Hamilton overtake, of course, on Norris up the inside of the cop, so I wouldn't even call it an overtake. Norris let him through. As we've got Perez here gaining on Stroll into Stowe. My God, I couldn't remember the corners for a moment. Then I just got sat back down and you started talking to me again. And water went down the wrong way, so that's why I was like, oh God. But yeah, Ricciardo holding off Sainz for the time being here. I mean, Ferrari's race pace is so strong, so it wouldn't awfully surprise me here if Sainz does end up getting past Ricciardo.
The only thing, as I was saying before you came back, is because of the Ferrari's lack of straight line speed compared to the McLaren, as long as Ricciardo gets a good exit off the corners, then I think it will be hard for Sainz to get past. But saying that, he looks a bit closer now through the exit of Luffield, but of course won't be able to get past down to Copse, and we'll have to try and make sure he's good on the exit of Chapel onto the Hangar Straight, the DRS Open. As Hamilton is now starting to gain on Bottas. Bottas is lapping about the same speed as Charles Leclerc, if not a tad quicker, but I do believe that Charles Leclerc is saving his tyres, because Leclerc, I think, could go a lot quicker. Because remember, Leclerc did pit quite a few laps later than Valtteri Bottas, so I think Leclerc's comfortable here for the moment, as long as he doesn't have an issue, as Ricciardo is still ahead of Carlos Sainz in the battle for 5th and 6th place. As Alonso is in 7th still, just ahead of Stroll and Perez. And Alonso 17.5 seconds behind his compatriot Carlos Sainz. As, just seeing also another close battle down there. Vettel, I swear, has been within a second of Latifi for the entire race. As Tsunoda is right behind Kimi Räikkönen, about half a second behind him. So we'll look out for those battles, as Perez just cannot do anything about the cars ahead, because Stroll, first car ahead, has DRS, and he's too quick down the straights, as the Mercedes-powered cars normally are. As Sainz is finding right now. He's struggling to find his way past Daniel Ricciardo, and like I was saying, if he wasn't being held up like this and he didn't get his pit stop wrong, then he would probably be right after Lando Norris for 4th place. So it is a shame for him that that problem happened at the pit stop, as we are starting to see a train form behind Fernando Alonso, because now Gasly is only 1.2 seconds behind Perez and Ocon only 1.2 behind him. They're now about 5-car train fighting over 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th, and Raikkonen, by the way, down in 12th place, 7.5 seconds off. Got to say, Alfa Romeo have had a pretty poor race, considering they're normally strong on race day, so I'm very surprised they've been so bad. So now laps 37 out of 52, and we are about 15 laps away from the conclusion of the British Grand Prix, and what a finishing order, or what an order we have right now, and we'll see if it finishes that way. Of Charles Leclerc in the lead by 9 seconds from Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton 3rd. Lewis Hamilton is gaining on Bottas, but not quickly enough to really be getting after Leclerc. And then Norris is 4th. Ricciardo 5th, with Carlos Sainz very close behind in 6th. Alonso just about holding off the cars behind for 7th, with Stroll 8th, Perez 9th, Gasly 10th, Ocon 11th, and the rest of the order: Raikkonen, Tsunoda, Russell, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Vettel, Mazepin actually is in 18th. And a Mick Schumacher. I think Mick pitted a lot later than Mazepin. I think that's why that is the case there. And of course, Max Verstappen in 20th, because he was knocked out of the Grand Prix on the first lap by Lewis Hamilton, which is why Hamilton's down in 3rd, because Hamilton had a 10-second time penalty. As Bottas has a bit of a blister on the inside of his front right, which is pretty normal around here, normal for them. And like I said, he's lapping about the same speed as the leader, Charles Leclerc. Actually lapping a tad quicker, but he's not lapping quickly enough, really, to catch the Ferrari. Because we only have, 14 laps to go. And unless Valtteri Bottas catches Leclerc at 0.8 of a second, or 0.7 at least per lap, I don't see how Bottas is going to win this Grand Prix.
Yeah, you might see Yeah, you might see the gap between the two just starting to close a little bit as Leclerc's being told by Ferrari that he needs to just look after his tyre temperatures a little bit. As Perez, jeez, I thought he was going to hit Stroll for a moment then.
Got very close to the rear end there, and he lives to fight another day. He's desperate, of course, to get ahead because he knows that, of course, 6 points for 7th would be better than 2 points for 9th. And you never know, could be under threat from cars behind who are actually on fresher tyres. So this is an intriguing battle. It looks as though Stroll might have actually dropped without too far behind to get DRS here. Has he? No, he has just about got it. And he does gain a lot in the straights, I have to say, on the Alpine. The Alpine definitely got more grip than the Aston Martin, but the Aston Martin pretty quick in the high-speed stuff compared to the Alpine. Honestly, the Aston Martin is probably one of the quickest cars on the straights, as Lewis Hamilton does the fastest lap. If Hamilton was to finish 3rd and get the fastest lap of the race, then Hamilton would cut the lead of the championship down to 17 points. If he maintains the fastest lap and finishes 2nd, though, it'll be down to 14 points, but still not cut enough into that lead, finishing in those positions. Had to win, honestly, with Verstappen not finishing. As Hamilton is gaining on Leclerc, quite a few tenths per lap, but like we've said, I think Leclerc is just looking after his tyres. As Perez pits again. We did say, didn't we, he's on a 2-stop. I think we completely forgot about that, and now he'll pit. I'm going to hope he doesn't go on the soft tyre, because those tyres will die after about 3 laps. So let's hope that's not the case. As no, it'll be another set of mediums. We'll see how quick he is. He might have some real stunning pace to get his way through all those cars. I mean, Alonso, Stroll, and that will struggle at the very end. So Gasly up to 9th. Ocon is up to 10th in the Alpine. So Alpine double point score at the moment, as Perez comes out right behind Sebastian Vettel in 17th position. So Raikkonen P11, Tsunoda 12th, and then Russell, Giovinazzi, Latifi. Got to say, Latifi's doing pretty well. I really want to give a shout out to him because he's done a lot better this season than I think people give him credit for. As Perez goes down the inside of Vettel at turn 6. Latifi is only about 3.3, 3.4 off his teammate. And his teammate is obviously much better than him, but I think we do have to still give credit to Latifi for being that close to him. And also, he has done that quite a few times in the last few races. So, Latifi, I don't think he's driving, considering how talented he is, I don't think he's driving that badly at all. I think just Russell is just such a great driver in comparison. And I think, honestly, if Latifi was teammates with someone else, I think people would probably appreciate Latifi a bit more. As Latifi up to 15th. And yeah, Perez has just passed, as I just said, Sebastian Vettel for 16th position, as we're now on lap 40 out of 52, and we have 12 laps remaining, as Leclerc about 8 seconds clear of Bottas. And Valtteri, is he going to let Lewis through here, or is he going to hold him up? Let's see. Valtteri actually defends. No, he's going to let him through. He's going to let him through. There you go. And actually, as it stands, Norris is going up into 3rd. Because obviously Lando Norris is 4th. Lando Norris is currently heading for 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. There you go. As Hamilton now begins his lap 41. Does a fastest lap of the race. But he is 8.5 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. He needs to catch Charles Leclerc by 1 second per lap. If he does that, and he can, this time, not be affected as much as he was earlier by the dirty air, then Lewis Hamilton will win the Grand Prix. But we'll have to see if he actually does gain a second per lap. As Carlos Sainz still within a second of Ricciardo, but cannot get anywhere near getting past. As Perez, by the way, about to, I think, pass very soon Antonio Giovinazzi, who is just about hovering a second behind the Williams of Russell. And if Ferrari are smart, they'll tell Leclerc just to up his pace a tad, just to make sure they're safe for the end of the race, and then they're not having to bite through all their nails before the end here, as the gap is down already to 7.9 from 8.6. So Hamilton doing... We'll see when he starts Leclerc the next lap. But I think Hamilton is just about... It says that Hamilton will be in striking distance of Leclerc in 9 laps. And we have almost, or just over 10 to go. So it's going to be close if Hamilton can keep gaining at that rate. Now lap 42 out of 52. As Perez passes Giovinazzi now for 14th place. So Perez is up to... He's past Latifi. And he's passed Giovinazzi there. So he's up to 14th. And he will pass Russell very quickly as Sebastian Vettel has come into the pits. Don't know what for. Do you think Hamilton will get Leclerc here, Nib? Or do you think Leclerc will just have enough in hand at the very end to hold him off?
No, I don't think so. I mean, as I was saying to you before, he was just looking after the tyres, lifting and coasting. That's why the gap was starting to come back a little bit to Bottas. As that Vettel is retired from the Grand Prix. Yeah, he's had a bit of a stinker, hasn't he, today, Seb? After he had actually a really good start.
It's a shame for him, because he's actually had a really good weekend. He's been consistently top 10. Got top 10 in Friday qualifying. 8th in the sprint quali, as Perez now passes Russell on the final corner. So Perez has got way more grip than anyone else. And he might get right back up to that battle he was in. We'll have to see. But he's got way more grip right now than anyone else, as Perez is now up into 13th position in the Red Bull.
Was I stupid? Or did I just see Verstappen was second in driver of the day standings?
I didn't see it, unfortunately. But if that's the case, then those people are absolute clowns who shouldn't be allowed to vote in anything. As lap 43 out of 52, and Hamilton does a new fastest lap, and the gap is down to 6.3 seconds now. Going to be close. It's going to be close.
I think you'll overtake him. I don't think he'll overtake him. We saw in the first stint, as soon as he got anywhere near the Ferrari, he wasn't really able to close in and make an overtake. So I don't think Hamilton will win the Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's Lewis Hamilton, so we'll see. I've been surprised many times by him.
True.
True. And he is gaining very quickly now. And when you're in this position where you're in a faster car, just, with the home race, it's a lot easier to be in his position, hunting down for the win, than it is in Leclerc's position, where Leclerc has got to try and find a lap time to lap at where he can just about remain quick enough to win this race. And yeah, it's definitely, like it's been said before, easier to hunt than be hunted, as Carlos Sainz is currently on the hunt for 5th place, but Ricciardo driving very well, I have to say, holding back. As, by the way, Lewis Hamilton has not gained that much on this lap. He's only gained about half a second, maybe 6/10 at most. He's still gained quite a bit, but not enough on that lap, so Hamilton's got to up his game if he's going to catch Charles Leclerc. Should have been really another 3 or 4 tenths that lap if he was going to really put Leclerc under pressure. Sainz is getting really impatient now behind Ricciardo. He's in a much faster car. He just cannot get a good enough release off the corners. And also, he just doesn't have the straight line speed. As Leclerc, 5.5 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, as they are quarter of the way through lap 44 out of 52. Can Leclerc hold on to win the British Grand Prix? The last time Ferrari won the British Grand Prix was not even that long ago. It's only 3 years ago with Sebastian Vettel. Can Leclerc add another one to the famous collection, the famous team? As Sainz within DRS yet again, down to Brooklands, but not close enough. As Perez, I've just noticed, is already past Yuki Tsunoda. So Perez is up into 12th position. And there's a replay of him going down the inside of turn 4. Tsunoda holds around the outside, but Perez with DRS will easily... Or Tsunoda has DRS as well, but he'll easily get the move done on fresher. tyres. And the next victim will be Kimi Raikkonen in P11. And then after that, it'll get a bit difficult for Perez because there is about a 10-second gap, or 11-second gap, sorry, to the next car ahead. As Hamilton does another new fastest lap, and he gained a lot that lap, and it's only 4.7 seconds now, the gap between Leclerc and Hamilton on lap 45 out of 52. And if Leclerc has any grip or pace left in his tyres, he's got to use it now, because if he doesn't and Hamilton can gain, say, 1.2 a lap, then Hamilton will be within a second of him on the last couple laps here, as Perez should be passing Kimi Raikkonen very soon, as Perez opens the DRS now on the hanger straight, and Raikkonen I don't think will even defend this, and Perez goes up the inside. Raikkonen actually does defend and holds on to it well. That was very good driving there by Kimi Raikkonen. And Perez actually left a bit bewildered in the background, as Hamilton so far on this lap has gained about half a second, and will probably gain another 3 or 4 tenths towards the end of this lap. As I've just remembered, I forgot to put Hamilton ahead of Bottas on the running order. There you go. Hamilton up into second. Sorry about that, but I think the reason that happened is because was it Valtteri Bottas let Hamilton through so easily that I forgot about it almost instantly. Which normally, whenever Valtteri Bottas goes wheel to wheel, I think everyone forgets about it instantly. As Hamilton gains 8 tenths of a second on that lap, lap 46 out of 52. And the gap is 3.5 seconds.
Leclerc was 3 tenths faster as well than what he did on the previous lap for that last lap. So Leclerc's on mode push. He's been given extra engine power. As you can see, he's doing a 31.2 now. He's doing a mid-30s. So yeah, Hamilton is quick and he's closing quickly.
Yeah, very, very quickly, and he might break Ferrari hearts here, but he'll make all the British crowd very, very happy if he can get this win. Be a vital win for his World Championship, where he would cut the lead from 33 points down to just 7 if he was to win, as Perez still cannot get ahead of Raikkonen, which makes really no sense, because Perez is a lot quicker in really all aspects. As now at the end of lap 46, the gap has not come down as much on this lap as, and yeah, Verstappen, you're right, is second in the driver of the day voting. Make of that what you will. We're now on lap 47 out of 52, and Hamilton that lap gained, as Hamilton saying he's picking the pace up, man, and they're just reminding him, Lewis, you are looking very strong, which he is. Lap 47 out of 52, Hamilton that lap gained 1 second on Charles Leclerc. Leclerc giving it everything he can, but will it be enough to hold off the 7 times world champion, hunting for yet another victory around the famous Silverstone circuit? As he comes now through Luffield, does Lewis Hamilton on lap 47. And onto the old pit straight. He can now see his potential victim, but can he make him one? As Hamilton through Copse he goes. And Leclerc and Hamilton separated by 2.3 seconds. If you're a Ferrari fan, you've got to hope that that dirty air effect does something, because if it doesn't, then I think Hamilton is going to be too hard to stop here. As oh, what's happened here? Gasly, yellow flag in sector 3. Oh, Raikkonen is off the track. Perez did just pass him briefly, so I wonder if there was contact there. As Gasly is pitted very late on, I have to say. There's only 5 laps left, and Gasly was in the point, so why has he done that? Unless he's got a problem. I don't know why he's done that. As Leclerc there passes the slow Raikkonen, and now they're getting into some of the traffic, which I think will help Leclerc slightly here. As they're now on lap 48 out of 52. And let me just update some of the order there. So yeah, Perez and Raikkonen racing through the chicane at the very end of the lap, and Raikkonen forces his way down the inside and just spins by himself. I don't know if Perez squeezed him there or what. We'll have to see later on, but
it looked like he hit the curb.
Yeah.
It looked like he hit the curb and lost it.
Similar to Magnussen last year, before his crash with Albon. So Gasly is pitted, Ocon is up to 9th, Perez has gone up to 10th. Why is Gasly pitted? He must have a problem, because that makes no sense whatsoever. As
I'm looking on Twitter.
as Tsunoda is up to 11th, Perez 10th, and then you've got Russell up in P12. Giovinazzi is in 13th now, and then Gasly 14th, and then Latifi 15th, Raikkonen 16th. As the gap at the end of lap 48 is 1.4 seconds between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton.
You know what? Gasly had Chazza.
What?
He had puncture.
Oh, dear. Let's hope that doesn't happen to anyone else. We saw that last year, didn't we? 3 or 4 on the final 3 or 4 laps. And look how much traffic is ahead here of the two. This, depending on how Charles Leclerc gets through this traffic, it could hinder him or help him massively. As Tsunoda, no, that's Gasly. Gasly passing Giovinazzi for 13th place back there. As Leclerc is 1.2, 1.1 ahead of Hamilton. So Gasly up to 13th. Gasly should get past Russell and probably his, well, maybe not his teammate by the end of the race, but should probably finish in P12. As Hamilton now within a second of Charles Leclerc as they go through Copse Corner. Leclerc needs this Williams to get out of the way of Latifi, and he does, but gets out of the way in a position where it's not really good for Charles Leclerc, because Leclerc can't gain anything or make Hamilton lose anything in that aspect, as now Charles Leclerc will have to start weaving to break the toe, as Hamilton now has got DRS. He won't make a move now because he's too far behind, but now with DRS accomplished for Hamilton, Leclerc is going to have to produce the best 3 full laps of his entire Formula 1 career if he is going to win the British Grand Prix. As we are now on lap 50 out of 52. Perez is pitted as well, so has he got a puncture as well, I'm guessing? I'm going to guess so. As, well, yeah, Perez made contact, obviously, with Raikkonen, as Tsunoda is up to 10th when he started 16th. What a result for him. Russell up to P11 now. Gasly is up to 12th. Gasly might still get a point, even though he had a puncture. There's Gasly up to 12th. As Hamilton closing in on Leclerc, but still not close enough. But he is getting closer. Giovinazzi 13th. And then you got Latifi in 14th, Raikkonen 15th, Perez 16th. As now, on the run to Copse, will Charles Leclerc defend to the inside? Hamilton's coming down the inside! And he doesn't make the same mistake as last time, but Leclerc goes wide on the exit. Can Lewis Hamilton get the lead? Yes, he does! Lewis Hamilton leads the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and surely now will take yet another Grand Prix win at his home track on lap 50 out of 52. And Leclerc absolutely bottled it when the pressure was really on there. Driven brilliantly, don't get me wrong, but when the pressure was on, made a big mistake there. And Hamilton now into the lead. Here is a replay coming up. And I told you, Nib, Hamilton, he's too good. In that mood, he's just too good. And there you go. He has now the lead of the Grand Prix. And surely the win, as here's a replay, Nib, of that mistake from Leclerc.
Yeah, it looks like he wasn't going too wide, but then he just realised that if he rode over the aggressive curbs, he just had to go a little bit extra wide. And yeah, he got that move. Who cares about Tom Cruise celebrating it? Like, piss off.
As, just want to make sure the order is correct. And yes, it is at the moment. So Lewis Hamilton on now the penultimate lap of the race, leading the British Grand Prix. And surely Lewis Hamilton is going to win the British Grand Prix. He now laps Giovinazzi, I think, in the Alfa Romeo. at Cop's corner. Giovinazzi not giving him too much of a free ride through there. Still, though, Charles Leclerc has driven brilliantly, but just not well enough to beat Lewis Hamilton. Even though Hamilton has had a 10-second penalty, he has still come through. And again, this victory, this could completely change the course of the World Championship as Gasly round the outside of Russell at Stowe. Great move. And Gasly now up to P11. But he's too far behind Gasly to get a point. So Tsunoda will get the point for that team. As Hamilton about to begin the final lap of the British Grand Prix. And Nib, like I just said, with Verstappen out and Hamilton taking all of the available points, this surely is a turning point in the World Championship.
Massive turning point, and I'm sure it's only going to make Helmut Marko a little bit angrier. As well, immediately after the crash, he was calling for Hamilton to have a race ban. So Mr. Marko isn't exactly going to be too happy. Oh, he's not going to take full points, as Perez is just taking the fastest lap.
Well, okay, but still, 25 points, that's still pretty good. But this could, going into the summer break, this could really be the big turning point for Hamilton, couldn't it? Because going into Hungary, where he's been historically so great, this could be where Hamilton and Mercedes, now with a new upgraded car, really get after Red Bull. Do you think?
Yeah. We were talking about this before we started, that these upgrades that Mercedes have brought this weekend have really worked in improving the downforce of the underbody of the floor end of the car. So, yeah, I think we're certainly going to see a stronger Mercedes in the second part of the season. Of course, Red Bull are going to bring more updates and upgrades to every race. They've been bringing little bits and pieces to every Grand Prix. They had a little upgrade here for Verstappen's car this weekend.
Got to cut across you, sorry. So sorry, I've got to cut across you because Lewis Hamilton is about to come to the end of the final lap, and Lewis Hamilton wins the British Grand Prix. This is by far the most important victory of his season so far and might spark his bid to win an 8th World Championship. Charles Leclerc will finish in second. Brilliant result for him. Valtteri Bottas will finish in third. And then 4th is Lando Norris. 5th, Daniel Ricciardo. 6th is Carlos Sainz. And then 7th is Fernando Alonso. 8th, Lance Stroll. 9th, Esteban Ocon. 10th, Yuki Tsunoda. With Gasly, Russell, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Raikkonen, Perez, Mazepin, Schumacher, and Vettel and Verstappen are your only retirements of this Grand Prix. But it's Lewis Hamilton taking... He's took so many victories, I can't even remember how many times he's won around Silverstone. I think it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is his 7th win, I believe, around Silverstone, which is a record. Brilliant victory. Even though I will say, given what he did to Verstappen, he is a bit lucky today. I don't think anyone can deny that. If you want, Nib, you can finish your point. I'm really sorry to have to cut across you there.
No,
really sorry.
I had finished it. I had finished my point. So it was all good.
So let me just cool down a minute because it's hotter than anything. And just ask you, so with the race now coming to its climax, what would you, first off, driver of the day, and who would you rate your driver, what would you rate the race out of 10 for?
You got to give Leclerc driver of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, no one expected this performance from Ferrari. Of course, you can certainly make a case that Hamilton, well, I mean, for me, Hamilton's certainly not the driver of the day, but with the drive after the first lap incident, you could certainly make that Hamilton was probably driver of the day from then on. But stunning drive from Leclerc all day. Very unlucky not to win here. If Ferrari had a bit better of a car, he probably would have won today. So I do feel quite sorry for Leclerc. And of course, it's he's wearing the special helmet for, of course, the anniversary of Ferrari's first win here at Silverstone. So it would have been great for Ferrari fans and for Leclerc if they'd won today. But even better for the British fans and for Lewis Hamilton, as it's now, was it 8 or 7 points?
8 points.
Yeah. Game on. And that's why I was preaching this on Twitter. The championship is never, ever over until, well, I mean, I was going to say mathematically over, but of course it was over when Hamilton was it was a procession with Hamilton for the last couple of years. But when you've got this long to go, anything can happen. We saw Alonso, I think it was 42 points in the championship lead after this Grand Prix in 2012, and he still lost the championship. Anything can happen in Formula One, and yeah, the championship is well and truly not over.
Definitely. And quickly, what would you rate this race out of 10?
Sorry, I was waffling on. I forgot about that.
There's no problem at all.
I don't know, to be honest. I quite enjoyed the Grand Prix because, I mean, of course, Leclerc was driving so well. You know, all the other cars were pretty close. I'd probably give it a 7, maybe. I think it was certainly above average. Maybe it's probably around a 7. Would you agree?
I'd probably go slightly higher, say 7.5, maybe even an 8 at the absolute most. But I'd say probably a 7.5 out of 10. Like you said, above average Grand Prix, a good Grand Prix, definitely. Not a classic great Grand Prix, but it was a good race. That was a very good race there. And Silverstone does normally deliver good races, as we've seen in the past few years. So not really surprised that it's been a good Grand Prix with so many areas to race with other cars, and also there's plenty of drama here at Silverstone, as we normally see. A great moment, I have to say, for the crowd to appreciate this win for Lewis Hamilton, as they have to, of course, will him on in this championship battle to get title number 8 and prevent Verstappen winning his first before the new era next season. But yeah, I'd say 7.5 out of 10. And yeah, Charles Leclerc has to be driver of the day. He was definitely the best driver today. Hamilton drove well after the accident, but because of the accident, I can't give him a driver of the day at all, I'm afraid. Another mention, though. Well, Yuki Tsunoda, 16th to 10th. That's a good performance by him. Lance Stroll, 14th to 8th. And I would say Ricciardo as well for keeping Carlos Sainz behind him for so long. So those drivers as well, I think, deserve a shout. And also Russell finishing in 12th place. I think he deserves a shout as well. But guys, unfortunately, I won't be able to read any more comments because it's so hot in my studio. I'm just going to have to end the stream, I'm afraid. Thank you, Nib, for coming along for this Grand Prix. Bit of a shit weekend with the format, but at least the Grand Prix delivered. And we'll see you for the final race before the summer break in Hungary in a couple of weeks.
Indeed, we will. Yeah, disappointing that, you know, the first lap happened, the incident between Hamilton and Verstappen. We don't want crashes like that sort of influencing the championship, certainly like it perhaps could today, and especially with Verstappen, of course, going off to hospital to get a precautionary CT scan. So we certainly hope and send all our well wishes to Max Verstappen and hope he is all okay. But yeah, a pretty good Grand Prix. And yeah, we certainly don't need to change none of the format because, I mean, look at this. The race was fantastic, you know. We don't need to change anything as Lewis Hamilton's celebrating now with all the fans, waving the Union Jack around like an absolute madman. And yeah, thanks for having me on as per usual, Chaz. It's been a pleasure. And we will indeed all see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on as usual. And yeah, guys, don't forget, I will be live later today. I'm going to delay my stream until, say, 8:30 instead of 8 because, we had a half an hour or 40-minute delay with the red flag. So I'm going to delay my stream by half an hour just to give me some more time to get things ready. And of course, I will analyse the Hamilton-Verstappen incident as best as I can with some still images and all of that. So make sure to come along to the race review tonight at 8:30 p.m. UK time. That's in 3 hours and 20 minutes from now. And as well, of course, I'll be live for the Hungarian Grand Prix in a fortnight's time as well. But guys, thank you for coming along to the stream and being a part of another race watch along. Again, don't forget to sub to the channel for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or just go to my channel page and do it there. And whilst you're there, hit the notifications bell. And also, don't forget as well to share the video on your channel everywhere you can to support the channel. And also, in supporting the channel, don't forget to smash the like button as well. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. Very active server. It'd be great to have you a part of that as well. But guys, until my race review tonight, at 8:30 p.m. UK time, and until the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time, It has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.